What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Representing the Resin. My name's Jameson Wellborn, and today we are joined by my good friend Eli of
What's up, everybody?
ET Farms. Eli, how you doing, bro?
Man, I'm feeling good, man. It's nice to be back at home and enjoying the holiday weekend here, just chilling. You guys have seen me. I've covered 25,000 miles this year, so it's nice to just be here at the battle station and kind of regroup, get ready for this first part of the year.
That's awesome, bro. Where are you joining us from?
Southern Oregon. I'm in Grants Pass.
Beautiful.
Right on the Rogue River.
Beautiful. So, as always on this show, we like to start at the beginning. So before we get into all the cool stuff you're working on today and all the cool stuff you've accomplished, let's, tell us about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
Oh, man, I was born and raised in San Jose, California. Born in 84. So I'm an 80s baby and a 90s kid.
Let's go. So what was, talk to me a little bit about childhood. Like what was family like? What was school life like? What were you like?
Yeah. So I grew up, I was on the west side of San Jose. Pretty typical, early 90s, mid 90s life. It was like, you get off school, you get out of your school clothes and your parents are like, okay, go outside and disappear and don't come back in till the street lights come on. And once those street lights are on, you better be your ass at the table with your hands washed, ready to eat. Yeah, I'm got an older brother, have a younger sister. I'm the middle kid. Kind of went all around San Jose all the way through my elementary school years, like Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, just kind of everywhere in San Jose. Grew up. My grandfather was one of the ones that raised me. Our parents had to be at work, and my grandfather was an 18-hour-a-day worker, so he's spare time I was digging ditches or putting insulation in ceilings and doing all the construction work that child labor probably wouldn't let us do these days.
What was school like for you? Did you enjoy it?
School was good, man. I feel like, I was a prime target for the Ritalin generation. I feel like a lot of my early years, I felt like I was kind of in a bubble. I felt like from third grade to eighth grade, when my family had decided that was the route to go, as a lot of kids in the 90s, I feel like it wasn't until I came off of Ritalin and onto cannabis that I really started kind of putting life together, I mean, school was good. My brother was only 2 years older than me, so we were always right around the same grade and same classes. So we rode to school together. He was a right-hand man for me for most of it. It wasn't until my, seventh grade year, I moved up to the East Bay, or east of the East Bay, to a little town called Livermore that was blowing up at the time. And then that's where I finished up school. I went to high school there. I went to Livermore High. And then, that's pretty much my school. I really enjoyed school. I think that probably history was my favorite. My brother's a huge history buff. He's a major in U.S. history, so it kind of rubbed off on me. Family's got a lot of history here. We're pre-revolution family in America. So my great-grandfather, who my middle name's after, was documented as one of the great last American Western cowboys out there, cattle wrestler. Like we're America.
So talk to me about cannabis, man. Like growing up, being the middle child, were you exposed at an early age to cannabis? Like when did you first become aware of the plant?
I think that it was probably the first concert my dad ever brought me to. And it was Page and Plant from Led Zeppelin. And we were sitting at Shoreline Amphitheater, and I'm, just smelling this smell. I think I was in fifth grade or sixth grade. And I was smelling this smell. I'm like, man, what is that? It smells like a skunk or something. And my dad just laughed. He rolled it off like, oh yeah, it's just a skunk. Don't worry about it. I think the first time that I put eyes on it, I think it was in our little bad middle school days when I was stealing cigarettes from my dad, and we were all hiding off in the park trying to go and smoke. The older kid, I think he was probably 2-3 years older than me at the time, he had just brought this Ziploc bag, and it was just like, from what I can remember, it just looked like green grass clippings. Really, I didn't really know what to think, but that smell, it like brought me back. I'm like, oh, that's what I smelled at that concert. They were smoking it. I don't know. I was too busy trying to be a cool kid and smoke a cigarette back then. So kind of went on to a couple more years till my 8th grade year. And then that's when I was kind of trying to transition off of Ritalin and talking to a lot of kids at that time. And I was like, I really think that I'm ready to experiment with, marijuana at the time. And my buddy gives me 2 joints, and he gives me a shake joint and he gives me a bud joint. And he goes, all right, look, smoke the shake joint first. If that doesn't do anything to you, smoke this one. So I bring it home. I have it in like a little fruit snack pack in a Ziploc, and I think I'm all shady and quiet. And I get it to my house, and my mom's like, what do you have on you? So I don't know what you're talking about. And so they ended up taking it. So that didn't end up working. So I went back to school the next day, and I'm like, look, man, my mom's got a hold of it. Like, almost got busted. Like, she just took it from me. So then he hands me a little Batman dub sack baggie stuffed to the brim full of what we now know, or what I didn't know at the time, was just some straight BC bud. And he's like, all right, look, just take this. And he gives me an old wooden pipe. And it's like one of those old military ones with the ash catcher on the top that you can smoke through. So yeah, like went home the next day. My mom was working graveyard shift. She was a paramedic for a long time. So before I went to school, she would barely be getting home. So I thought it was wise. Okay. Like before school, 8th grade year, I'm like, all right, let's smoke some of this. And I didn't know what I was doing. Before school, like 7:30 in the morning. And I like packed the bowl and I smoke it and I hit it and I hold it in. I'm coughing all crazy. And I'm like, well, that's burnt. So I pull it out and pack more and smoke that and pack more and smoke that. I probably sat there and smoked most of the gram just to my face, just back to back to back, because I didn't know what to expect. So yeah, as you can imagine, this young kid is now high as a kite. And I walk back inside and I sat down on my couch with a Costco-sized box of those Fruitio fruit snacks you used to put on your fingers. I think my brother caught me when I was like, I don't know, 20-something packets deep. And he comes downstairs and he's just like, yo, what are you doing? And he was always the straight edge. I was the middle kid, trouble kid. And I was just like, I'm so high right now. And all he had to say is like, well, mom's going to be home in like 20 minutes, right? So I freak out. I call my friend. I'm like, who gave it to me? I'm like, dude, I don't even know. Like, how do you get unhigh? He probably, I can only imagine his face. He goes, well, and this is like no cell phones. We're talking on the house phone. Like this is, and he goes, the only thing I can think of, Eli, is fill your kitchen sink with ice water. And he goes, and dunk your head in it and hold it in there as long as you can for as long as you can. So I took heed and I was like, well, maybe that'll work. So I'm just dunking my head in this water. And all of a sudden I hear the garage door open. And the roll-up door's coming up. I'm like, oh, there's my mom. Oh, shit. So by the time I got the last ice cube out of the sink, I go running upstairs and act like I'm still sleeping for a little bit. And I think the rest is history from there. But yeah, no, it was a wild experience. I ended up having to like go to school, and I'm just like, first time and smoking a gram to your face, your first time, like I was lit beyond words. That's for sure.
That would have been a tough first day. That would have been a tough day at school for anyone.
And my friend that kept giving it to me, he kept fucking with me, but he kept feeding me snacks. And so yeah, that was my first exposure to it. That was and then from there, it was really kind of on into high school. Like that was kind of the latter part of my 8th grade year. And, I approached my parents that I had tried it, and that I was like, it had really changed my perspective on like, wow, I was in a meth bubble for the last 5 years on this Ritalin that you guys were pumping down my throat. And, so I told them, I was like, I'm not using that anymore. And I was like, I found something that's really working for me. And, I was young and they weren't really ready to hear it. They were 80s parents. So they knew the gig. I wasn't hiding anything from them, but, yeah, it was kind of freshman year, met the, the seniors and the guys that had graduated the year or two before. And that was, east of the East Bay, where the 5 connects to the 580 to the 680 is a huge transjunction for the Bay Area traffic. So it was tons of BC bud coming through there. And that was pretty much most of it through high school was just, getting the sacks from the older guys and smoking at lunch, deciding whether you're going to buy a burrito or whether you're going to smoke weed that day. That was kind of my entry.
Were all Easters at that time, or were you getting?
Funny enough, I didn't even see like Mexi brickweed until my senior year. It was in my buddy's ashtray of his '88 Cutlass that we were just like bumping. Brother Lynch hung and just dumping around, smoking weed, and I was like, "Bro, what's that in your ashtray?" And I was like, "Is that like grass or something?" And he goes, "No, that's Mexi, bro. That's what we've been smoking before the BC came around." I just like took it. I'm looking at it. I'm like, "This isn't weed." Probably my sophomore year into my senior year is when like Champelli. I mean, we were blessed with getting champagne around the East Bay area. I got to get introduced to some of the first skunks that came out. That was, I think, the only weed that I ever had in a jar, and you could still smell it. It was
was it? What was your memory of skunk? Like, what did
it was too much. I was so used to BC bud. My buddy comes around the corner. My buddy, he's a chef now, Chef Jeremy, and he was my little high school buddy. He comes walking down the street, and I can smell it before he even gets 100 feet to me. I'm like, "Man, what do you have?" He goes, "It's the Glen Doge," and that was one of his older buddies, Glenn. And I was like, "All right." So he's like, "Man, smoke this," and all we had was an apple at the time, so. Apple rips, and I am coughing and choking and like, "That's too strong." Like, what? No, that's not weed. It was really kind of my first intro into my memories of like what quality grown cannabis was all about. I mean, it was cured right. It was, everything that we got from BC was pretty moldy and wet and just smelled like pumpkins. Really, we got kind of the tail end as we were young. Yeah. That skunk I would say would probably be the most standout of the first true like connoisseur experience in smoke that I had ever had.
And I mean, not to like sidebar this too much, but like, what are your thoughts on this matter? Like, do you feel like it's still held and around? Do you feel like it was gone and lost in raids? Do you feel as though like
the skunk itself?
Yeah,
the skunk. Man, it's been a long time since I've seen anything that I would compare to what I can put my feelers on that memory. I know that as of recently, there's a lot of the roadkill skunks and a lot of the East Coast people that have held on to the varietals for a long time that are claiming to be the old school skunks. I would say that I haven't been doing my due diligence and hunting those out for the last like 3 or 4 years. I've been, focusing on other genetics, but I mean, I think that as a godfather to most of the strains that we have these days, I would hope that somebody's holding on to that heirloom.
There's just been some commotion around that specific strain and individuals saying they have it and may not having it. And, us not really being able to replicate or produce a line that is a roadkill skunk, like smells like a roadkill skunk.
Yeah. Flat possum on the highway. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't want to detract. I want to get back to your story. So, by sophomore year, you're really into cannabis. You're sort of tapped into the culture. You're starting to see, the high end and the things coming through the California sort of pipeline, so to speak. What came next for you? Like, did you start moving? What was your next move?
I think from there, like my senior year, I think is when it pinnacled for the high school flower. I think that's when we finally saw that pink champagne. And that was just, to this day, I pray that somebody has that laying around. So it was astringent. It smelled like champagne. It was pink. The pistils were beautiful. It's like the trichome coverage was just, I mean, I look at strains nowadays. I'm like, man, I don't even think they were as frosty as that was. So yeah, that was kind of the pinnacle, man. I ran track, I was a 4x1, 4x4 and 100-yard dash track runner. I'd come to track practice stoned and beat everybody in foot races. I brought Livermore High all the way through the state finals, beat DJ Williams, who went to the NFL pros the next year in a 4x1 race. So it was pretty athletic. And, at that time, right as I was getting out of high school, I had chosen to join the Marine Corps. My junior year was 2001 when September 11th happened. And I got a long line of military history in my family. And, I kind of allowed cannabis to stay there, but really started focusing on the career ahead of mine that I had chosen to do. So by the end of my senior year was really starting to get into full Marine Corps mode. So kind of started putting cannabis on the back shelf. I mean, just because I knew I wasn't able to smoke it. Like I had to tell the recruiter that I had only ever smoked it 3 times in my whole life, and just had to really kind of get into U.S. government mode, you know.
Would you say 9/11 was that catalyst that promoted that career decision, or were you always kind of interested in?
Growing up, I mean, my grandfather was in the Navy in the Korean War, and it skipped a generation with my father. But I don't know. I think as a kid, I grew up and I was, seeing the commercials of the Marines with the sword, and I'd see my grandfather's sword sitting there as a kid, and I think it had a lot of childhood interest. But I mean, yeah, I definitely hit home being from Livermore, California. It's 4th in the world in terrorist bombing lists. The lab there is where Reagan built all the, satellites to knock all the nukes out of the sky, the Space Wars program. So yeah, I went to school in the morning, and my buddy was listening to AM radio, and it says America's under attack. And I thought he was just joking, talking about some radio show or something. And, all of our teachers sent us home. And I think at that point in time, it was, am I going to go to college? Am I going to look at this track scholarship, all the way across country? Chapel Hill in North Carolina was looking at taking me on under a 3-quarter ride track scholarship. One of my best friends, Justin, he had pretty much pulled the trigger, and, he was one of my good friends, and it was something in the back of my head. And yeah, I think that did solidify a lot of it, just because I was in it and I was a high school kid and I was ripe at the age of recruiting. And I think it all just kind of fell into my lap at that point like that.
So like, how did you walk into the recruiting office and say, sign me up, or like, how'd that whole,
my friend had already been working with a recruiting officer that was the local recruiting officer in town that was pretty much talking to all the high school kids from both the major high schools in our area. And it was, like I said, I was the pothead kind of lackadaisical kid. I wasn't your typical, jarhead mentality of like, let's go get some. And, it was an interesting decision. And, if I was going to decide a branch of the military, it was always going to be the Marines. So yeah, then I went into the recruiting office with him one day, my friend that was going already. And yeah, just kind of started the path to, recruitment, which was taking your ASVAB tests and going and getting all these physicals and the process of getting into boot camp. So that was 2003. I actually ended up on the yellow steps of MCRD San Diego, which is where they train Marines down there, standing on the yellow footprints, which is green light, go, you're about to get thrashed for the next 13 weeks. And I'm like, it's St. Patty's Day. Like, I should have a Guinness in my hand. Like, what am I doing standing here? But yeah, I mean, it was a career path that I'm glad that I chose. I wouldn't take it back for anything. We did a lot of stuff for the U.S. government that I'm not going to go down that channel. I don't think this is what this is here for. I love this country and I love everybody in it. And I think that I went and fought for the freedom that I thought we were fighting for. And yeah, I think 2007, moving forward, getting out of there, I was in San Diego, and an Army recruiting officer was trying to give me 2 pay grades in any job that I wanted, but I found out I was having my son like a week before. So I was respectfully declined and took back off up to the Bay Area. A hot mess, 21 years old, not knowing up from down, left and right, not really getting any support. We were really vilified for taking on the roles that we took on over there by a lot of people. And so, yeah, I was pretty lost in the sauce, honestly. Like, I didn't really know which direction to go. I knew that I had my GI Bill and I could work towards college and everything with that. It really took a really good friend of mine, Jacob Wyatt. He's about 4 years older than me, and he snagged me up when I got home and was 21, ripe and ready to go to the bars and try to forget about what I had done. And he goes, "Look, man, you can either become a lost 21-year-old that never leaves this town, or you can, become a responsible drinker and really try to figure out what the next step is in life." And he really took me under his wing. And, he was growing a little closet grow with a metal halide that they had stolen from a light post, like from the street. And it was a bushy old grower, the bog bubble. And I remember walking into his apartment one day to come and get some weed from him. And, I was just, using it to try to medicate myself back to a sobrietal standpoint. And I was like, hey, man, I was just like, I've always wanted to kind of, get into, the growing side of this and kind of learning more about the plant. I was just like, I really don't have anything going on for myself right now. Like, what's up? Do you think I could come and just kind of shadow you, or kind of just like, I don't know, just learn a little bit? And at that moment, he literally stuck a hose in my hand with a stopwatch. He goes, hit every single one of those pots for 20 seconds each. He goes, and make sure you do it even. Don't do this. And he's, from that moment forward, I just cared for the rest of that cycle. It was just a little apartment grow in Livermore. It wasn't anything big, but it was just really a mind-changing moment and a life-changing moment for me, that cannabis had done so much for me at a young age that I was really coming back to lean on it and coming back to use it as medicine again for myself at an adult age, 21. And so, I'm really thankful for Jake and really having him take me under my wing. They learned me about trimming and just kind of all the whole sphere of things kind of came within the next couple of years right there. That was the days of, Trainwreck, Green Crack, and Blue Night. And, there was 07, man. Yeah. So that's when all my friends were up in the Chico Hills, pretty famous area that unfortunately got burned down over the last couple of years, Paradise and Concow. That's kind of where the Blue Night came from. It was gifted to our circle from one of the local Native American Indians up there. It's kind of one of those cult strains that has hung around Northern California for a long time. It smells just like blueberry IHOP syrup. Wow. It's based off of DJ Short's Blueberry in a strain called Kryptonite too, which is, I think, Cindy 99 on Space Queen, I think. Some early 90s, early 2000s stuff. Yes, I mean, I think just from there, man, I think, just a couple of years had gone by, and that's kind of why my tagline is started in a tough shed and now I'm here. Like, I was living on my family's property, and I went to Home Depot, and I found this 8x8 tough shed, and I was just like, okay, I can sneak this in the backyard. Nobody will notice. So the day the tough shed's there and they're like installing my tough shed, here comes my grandfather to be like, hey, Eli, like, what you got going on there? I'm like, oh, it's just storage. There's not enough room in this little double wide that I was staying in the property. And he goes, okay. I mean, we have 30,000 square feet worth of warehouse in the back of this property. So storage was a little far-fetched for him. But yeah, we powered it up, man. We got a cool tube, one of those old 60-inch long ones, had 2000s on each end, and slapped it to the ceiling, and had 2 3x6 trays in there. And I had cables for the lights on a pulley system, so I could like move the lights back and forth throughout the days. I'm like, seriously, there's like this much room to walk through. But that was like my friend Aaron Cuddy. He was like the one that really kind of like primed me. He's like, look, dude, he's like, I have all these genetics. He's like, you obviously want to be in this. Let's do this. And so yeah, those were like the AF pack, all the early bananas and strawberry kush, and man, what else did we have from them?
Were you getting your resources, like as far as cultivation information, just from those individuals around you, or were you active on the forums at all? Like,
not really. I wasn't really active on the forums on the internet back in the day. I mean, I had the Ed Rosenthal Grow Bible, but I had just kind of looked to the friends like Aaron. He's from Humboldt County. He's born, bled, and raised there. So a lot of the resources has come from his history, and them being a little older than me and seeing my anticipation and seeing my drive to really like, I want to do this for more than just, a hobby. This is something that means something to me. So, just rock that first tough shed for probably a good 2 years. I was super fortunate. There was this old school dispensary in San Francisco that opened up in 96. It was one of the first ones. CMC was the name of it. You could go in there and you could buy an eighth and you could hand it to them, and they'd roll you joints. They had a smoothie bar, a coffee bar. You could sit. It was a true coffee shop vibe. And I went in there one day when I heard there was a bunch of clones and teens in there. And I saw this guy standing there that was kind of running it. Didn't really know who he was, but I mean, he had all the DJ Shorts blueberries, like OG Affy. Like he had all sorts of cool big plants in there, which normally wasn't in this place. And so I went up and talked to him for a second and got a couple clones from him. And I went back and sat down, and my friend was like, "You know who that was, right?" I'm like, no. He goes, "That's DJ Short himself. Like you were just talking to the man, the myth, the legend. Like these are all his personal plants." And the feds were nice enough to give this club 30 days notice. They're like, "You guys have been so good to the community. We'll allow you guys to operate for 30 days more." So then knowing that, I go back over to him and I say, thank you for, all the things that he had done. And we grabbed all the blueberries, the sativa, the indica, and the hybrid. He gave me chocolate. He gave me all sorts of stuff. And I think that was kind of the time I had the tough shed. I had a little room in my double wide that I was using for my veg area. That like genetics really started mattering to me. Like really knowing what I'm growing and really like appreciating the genetic side of it and what the breeders are doing. I mean, this plant, as we know, look how many thousands of flavors it's given us. So yeah, that was.
So were you holding mothers and pheno hunting and going through seeds at that point, or were you just holding the packs for a later time when you'd be more prepared?
Less on popping seeds at the beginning because I had just been gifted all these bomb moms and teens. But yeah, the first hunt that I hunted was the Chocolate that he had given me. And I mean, he had a little fanny pack on with about like this big of seed packs in it. And because he was DJ Short, there wasn't 10 seeds in there. There was like 60 seeds in there. And I got it for like $100. And so that was really like in my sativa days. I loved sativa back in the day. It was that espresso coffee. Woo! As we all know, if you guys remember, chocolate was like 90% sativa. So yeah, that was the first one I ever did. It was a lot of like cantaloupe hazes that came out. I was really looking for, what we knew is getting on BART in the mornings and going and buying chocolate Thai from the Rastas in Berkeley. Like I was like, where's this chocolate Thai at? That's what I was really looking for. But
were there any other equatorials from his lines that had those same effects as the chocolate?
I haven't. I mean, personally, I'm pretty sativa as it is. I haven't really felt much more of a big sativa like that than maybe some just like old school like purple hazes and things like that. But as for sativa type energetic flower, chocolate's been my pinnacle. My mom came in on me and my brothers after we smoked a joint of it. She goes, "What are you guys on? You guys are like doing this and talking really fast." I'm like, "Mom, it's this chocolate. I love it."
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so continue from there. You've got the shed. You've connected. You're getting more into it. What comes next?
I mean, I think that was just some classic. I think between there and like 2011 through 13 was just some classic Bay Kid stuff. Growing, hustling, trying to make a life. I have children. At this point in time, just trying to be a good dad and make things happen, survive the economy. Really just try to grow up. I was. I had a lot of growing up to do at an early age. So like once I hit my mid 20s, I was like, man, I kind of skipped some steps here. So that was a lot of that. That's kind of right then though, is when I got exposed to extracts for the first time. It was 2011. And it was some BHO oil that my friend had blasted into a little Pyrex, and he had already got it to the point where it was clear and honey and it's real nice shatter or whatever. I was like, man, what is that? And he was telling me the process, and man, they went all out back then. They were just like, instead of just a tube with some vector, they had like this big of a tube with like charcoal in it. And then they had the weed, and then they had the vector. And I don't know, that kind of just became a whirlwind quick. Like as soon as I got exposed to it, like everybody all of a sudden had like honey oil. It was a little honeybee extractor. And yeah, it was like kind of had started messing around with it myself and just was like, okay, it's just like, open blasting like everybody else was doing. And then I had a chemist friend, and I hope that somebody that watches this video can back what I'm saying right now. So there's a book from the 70s called The Cannabis Alchemy Book. And within that book, I'm sure you might have it on the wall. Within that book, it talks about isomerization. It talks about isolation. It talks about all these things, and it has all of the chemical properties and way to do it written within the book. There we are. So my friend was working at a lab in Berkeley that was specifically like stripping DNA apart and being able to like mess with it on a genetic level. So for lack of better words, he borrowed some lab grade ether every day that he was leaving work. So after about 6 months of him borrowing some ether, we had a little 500 ml jar. And so we were going to attempt to make pure Delta 9 THC. That was the isomerization process. So I'll try to run through it quick, but it's Blaster BHO, which we started with Trainwreck. Blaster BHO. Then once you have your kind of wet, getting towards batter style consistency, we put that in a siphon filter and we poured the ether on it. That melted all the butane hash into ether hash. We allowed that to sit in the siphon filter for 8 hours and drained the bottom and got all the particulate out. Now we had this neon yellow floating ether hash inside the siphon filter. Then we put it back into a pot and cooked that down. And now we have this ether hash jelly that was just one rip, just sent you to the moon. And obviously there was probably tons of ether still in it. So then from there, you take 99% pure sulfuric acid, which sounds crazy, right? You're like, acid? What do you mean? And so, yeah, you weigh the ether hash and then you put the sulfuric acid per 1 drop per gram. So now you've isolated and attached that acid, and it's supposed to take all the THCA and turn it into Delta 9. But now you have an acidic product that we poured lab grade sodium bicarbonate, basically baking soda, and poured that in it. And now we're like, okay, great. We ruined it. Now we got this sludge sitting here, and you got to pour that through salt. And then basically what comes out is like a sugar consistency, sugary battery kind of consistency that, I mean, we didn't have dab rigs back then. We had hookah coals and hot knives. But yeah, no, that's, I think, the furthest point that we had pushed science at that point with extracts is going off this book. My chemist buddy was like, luckily you guys didn't do it directly out of the book because the publisher flip-flopped some shit. He goes, you guys could have blown up straight up. So he's like, don't trust what's in the pages.
Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah, that was kind of my experience. And man, there would be people, we'd just come over and just people would be staring at the wall for 3 hours, be like, what is this? I'm like, don't worry, it's weed.
So were you hit? I mean, how long till you took your first legitimate hot titanium dab or swing nail dab? Like, was it a while? Man. Did that happen?
So, no, honestly, probably right around the same time. So my buddy Josh Stone, he's the holder. He's in the Canna Bible 3. It's his banana. It's his bull rider. It's his strawberry kush, his original pure kush. Amazing glass blower. He gave me and my friend Aaron that I was talking about literally, and you can dig the history, one of the first, if not the first, nails and rigs. It was a 10 millimeter bubbler attachment, male to male. It had the glass nail on top of it, and it had a dome. It was beautifully wig-wag worked blue. I cursed the day that my buddy's ex-girlfriend accidentally broke it because it should have been in a museum. But yeah, we went around to the biggest smoke shops in California, all around the Bay, Big Al's in Berkeley, we were Up and Smoke in San Jose, Paramount Imports, like all the big glass houses. And they looked at us like we were some straight druggies. They're like, what is this? You're like, you got to hit it with a torch, and then you put the what, and you got to do this. And we're like, yeah, trust me, this is what's coming. Like, and nobody believed us. All of them turned us away like we had some meth apparatus in our hand.
That's crazy, bro. That's wild.
Yeah, Josh Stone. Yeah, he's a good guy. He's at a Southern Humboldt.
That's super cool. So you made an attempt at getting the domeless nails to catch on, and you were just slightly ahead of your time.
No, they were still domed. Yeah, they were still domed.
Yeah. Still domed. And what happened next? Did you get really into open blasting? Like, were you?
I think we kind of just really used it for supplementary. We used a lot of our sugar leaf, a lot of our smalls. It was just kind of fun to do. And, it was worth, everybody was, we didn't know about purging or any of that. We'd scoop it out of the thing and flame would come off it. We're like, oh, just blow the first hit off. Like, don't worry about that one. And, it kind of was, it was a thing, we definitely stayed at it. I can say I have some pallets of Power 5 under my belt for sure. But no, it was, just kind of focusing on cultivation, man. I'm a flower guy. I will always have a joint in my hand. I feel like the essence of why I'm into solventless and what rosin brought me to, especially early in the days with flower rosin, was because it was close to this. It wasn't that. It wasn't the BHO taste and whatever that had done to it. But yeah, so at that point is when I kind of picked up. That was the Prop 215 days, are obviously under full swing for everybody, but it was kind of fresh for me, and started a collective. My grandfather allowed me to move into some warehouse space, and we were able to build like a booth that could hold 30 lights. Hustled my life away to just build it to code. He wanted it with sprinklers and all the things. So I was broke multiple times trying to get that built. And then, who you guys know is Sumar Farms, who's been cleaning house around all these competitions recently. He was one of the first guys I met when I moved down to the South Bay. He was a Sumar at the time. He's Sinister Racing. The man makes, if maybe the world's fastest Honda, front wheel drive for sure. Like, the guy's got some crazy cars. He took me under his wing, and that's when all I could afford was 12 lights. I had this big 20 by 30 by 10-foot room with 6 tables in it, and that was the cube and slab wrap. We put all the slabs down and wrapped them in plastic and cut the X's out with the 4x4s and flood and drain. I feel like that was kind of like where my first move into like semi-commercial growing was. It was a little more than what I needed. So we had gotten, and we were a full single source collective. There's a lot of people dodging around what that meant, but I was taking care of a lot of people with their medicine. So yeah, I mean, that was that was when we paid $3,000 for an OG Kush cut that took 4 months to get. And when I got it, it was unrooted and it had every bug known to man on it.
Were you, during those 215 days, were you going to market with a brand, or were you just taking care of patients? Or
it was just mostly taking care of patients. There was some smaller, like mom and pop style, dispensaries that were open at the time that really liked our product. And I think the biggest one was pre-connected days. Luke, he owned this club called Purple Elephant in San Jose. So did a lot of work with them back then. And that was, a lot. That was kind of the glory days of the duffel bag boy. You'd go into these clubs and like every dude in there has got 20, 30 pounds on them. Yeah. And, once that started kind of getting cracked down by the sheriffs, and, I was kind of going through some other growing phases of my lives, I kind of just fell out of that scene, just kind of kept to it, kept with my, collective of people that needed the medicine from me, and kind of just fell off that radar for a while. I was just like, didn't really like to see where it was kind of headed at that moment. And, I was busy just doing other things. And, I think it wasn't until, let's see, I have it in my notes, stoner notes. Shit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was 2016. In beginning of 2016 is when, we're open blasting and growing. And my buddy comes to the shop and he goes, "Bro, check out this page. It's the Sasquatch rosin press." I'm like, dude, what is that thing? I was like, why is it $5,000? Like, what's going on? I'm looking at it. I'm like, that's like a bottle jack with some springs. Like, what is that meant to do? He's just like, it's made to make hash. And I'm like, but how? And he didn't really know. I didn't really know. Like, nobody really knew. It was new. And, some select sub people obviously had already been washing and doing all that. But I stuck my neck out there. I paid them, I think it was like $3,500. It wasn't $5,000. I paid them $3,500 through the internet, barely any communication other than, here's my money. And I was like, okay, so either these guys are going to be the feds or they're going to have something cool. I'm like, I hope I really didn't mess up right now. And I had ended up getting a leg injury where I couldn't make it up to the cup that was happening in San Francisco. So Joel and Jessica and the Matt and all the squad from the beginning of Sasquatch came to my property. I just invited them there, which I never invited anybody to. I was like, all right, well, here's the moment of faith, right? And they showed up and they were the coolest kids on the block, right? They were just so humble, and like they're like, here's your machine. It was beautiful, bright, shiny thing. And like my buddy was literally open blasting at the time when it was getting delivered. I was like, hey, put that shit away. I was like, come check this thing out. And I was like, I happen to have a bunch of trim bin sift laying around. I was like, hey, do you guys mind hanging out for a little bit, kind of running me through this a little bit? And, absolutely. And, ran through the sift and made some, dark, bold sift rosin. It was trim bin hash keef that it wasn't taking care of at all. But yeah, as they were leaving, I told them, I was like, I really want this to be, I see what's happening here. I don't know. I hadn't seen it, but I was feeling it. And I was just like, I don't want to do this blasting anymore. I was like, if we can do this with literally, I always call it, and I always will. I'm like, with a fancy panini press, like, I was like, this is the way to go. And so yeah, Joel invited me down to Temecula to their headquarters. I said, hey man, I just want to kind of learn a little bit more about what's going on here. I don't want this to be a little shop toy collecting dust. Like, what's good? Let's put this thing to work. And invited me down with open arms. And I spent first day and a half there, and then that's when Phil, soil grown solventless, he was standing on the other side of the warehouse, and I was talking with Joel, and I was just like, something about washing, and he goes, oh yeah, why don't you go talk to him? He goes, that's Phil. He created rosin. Why don't you go over there and chat with him? So me just being me and my prankster ass, like I went over to him, I put my hand around his shoulder. I didn't even know him, and I was just like, I'm like, so was it your girl's hair straightener or was it yours? Because he had long hair back then. And he kind of just bats his eyes at me. He's like, wait, what? And I'm like, oh, man, I'm Eli. I just bought a Sasquatch. It's an honor to meet you. Like, thank you for what you've done, and you've created something that's, thank you. And I had questions, obviously. And I was like, man, I've been kind of pressing for the last month. I was like, I'd really love to learn how to wash. And Phil, once again, they're just such great, humble people. He's like, man, come down to Pasadena anytime. He goes, I'll teach you. Come on down. So I took that as an open invitation. I go home. I had just harvested. I put a bunch of fresh frozen and all, like 3 chest freezers in the bed of my truck with a Honda generator, gassed up, plugged into all these things, strapped into my truck. And I drive from the Bay Area, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to this shop, right? I'm going to go, fuck yeah. I'm going to the shop. And I get to this address, and it's a home. It's a house, like in the middle of a residential area in Pasadena. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm meeting him here first. And he comes outside, and he's like, hey, man, what's going on? And he's like, come on in. And yeah, man, he had an Artec foam small back corner of his garage that he had hot wired a hot wire to the thermostat wire on a window AC. It was just like the perfect decked out little garage setup. And, me and not knowing who he was and thinking oh, this is soil grown. This is going to have to be this. That's how roots he is and how roots I am on just like he's like, so what'd you bring? And he like goes to the back of my truck. He goes, wow, you brought 3 freezers with you, huh? And so, yeah, we proceeded to stay in his garage and work for 4 or 5 days. And like, he taught me all about the hand wash. He taught me all the different micron screens. We moved into doing a little 5-gallon like washing machine, Bubble Magic washing machine wash, and just really coached me and really just took me under it, out of the good of his heart, not knowing me from anybody else. Just like, I was like, yeah, man, come on, let's do this. And I mean, that really just forged where I sit today. As holy moly, I just was taught by the Holy Grail, and I need to respect that and move forward with honesty and integrity moving forward. Like this is a whole new hash. Like we got put into a whole weird class of fats and lipids. Like it's been an ever transforming thing with solventless. But yeah, that was kind of that's wow. my first path in solventless right there.
That's
man.
A pretty cool guy to learn from. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's such a recluse. Phil, where are you at? Come on, we're here. Yeah, he's a busy guy. Guy.
What leaving Phil's. What was the next steps for you? Like, were you purely focused on freezing your crops? Like, I know you said you're a flower guy. I'm always going to have a joy in my mouth. So, how did you approach those next steps? Like having this new knowledge.
I didn't really mess with fresh frozen up until just really freshly freezing my smalls and trim. Right. I hadn't never dedicated a whole plant fresh frozen. And I don't think I did for another 2 years. The flower market was just so good at that time.
Yeah.
And it was so new. And I was like trying to convince people like rosin is the way to go. And this is creating a shelf-stable product. Like, look at what this is doing. And people are, getting $3,000 to $5,000 for their pounds back then. They're like, you're going to stick this pound in that press? I'm like, absolutely. I'm like, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to get between 25 to 30% return on this flour rosin. I mean, I was looking back today, like my flour rosin looks better than some of my hash rosin I make today. So no, it took a lot of convincing, man. Like I was in the first wave, like people were trying to be truly salty on us. Like, and I feel like the only way that why that happened, and because I came from Blow and BHO, but the closed loop systems and rosin presses came out at the exact same time. So they're like, oh, we spent $150,000 on this crazy equipment, and you guys spent $5. There's no way that this could be the same.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, c'est la vie. We were all young. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just trying to make hash.
We all had our time in flour rosin. I feel as though if you don't experiment and have your time and pay your dues in flour rosin, the costs are just too tremendous for the amount of trial and error that you have to do to sort of dial in your processes if you were trying to just use loose resin. So I think
absolutely,
there's a tremendous amount of value to be learned and to start with flour rosin. I find it tremendously interesting that every single market has a life cycle of flour rosin, where flour rosin is hot and sexy. And and it's so interesting because it goes from the coolest thing to very not cool very quickly. But during
why are you doing that again?
Yeah. But during that time, it's super interesting, and it's really cool to hear that you were one of those guys on the bleeding edge. And yeah, I mean, I remember when flour rosin rumblings were coming out, and you were seeing just a few videos here and there, and closed loops were becoming more affordable, way more affordable than 20 grand, and guys were getting those small loops and running those and putting it into carts. And I think that flour rosin, what really sparked it was the ability to get that into a cart as well. Like guys were getting flour rosin into carts early. I remember that. Like, and
there's a lot of flour rosin that's nice and sappy for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's really cool. So I mean, what happened next when you got you're growing for flour for those next couple years, and then 2018 comes around. During those years,
that was like 16. 16, yeah, that was kind of. I came out of Phil's house with a whole new light. It felt like I had a lightning bolt coming out of me, and I was just like, but still at that same time, like I was privileged enough to go and learn that from him, where then I was trying to translate that into the masses of like, I just have learned this skill set. We're going to make this equipment and this methodology work to its maximum capabilities. And that's kind of the Marine Eli that comes out of me all the time. And I'm a Virgo too, so it kind of goes hand in hand. But yeah, I mean, from there, like that's when I was like, all right, so now I'm growing really good flour, and now I'm proficient at making sift and flour rosin. I hadn't started making hash rosin yet. I hit the streets again. I was like, all right, it's time to go, Eli. It's time to get back out there. ET Farms wasn't a thing at that point yet. The T in ET Farms is actually my partner, Troy. And I met him through the Chico family, early 2000s. He's the one that had the Blue Knight and all that. He's been a rock solid best friend of mine for a long time. But yeah, I kind of came back through, and I started in San Francisco. I went to a dispensary up there, or club still, what we could call them, called MetaThrive. And it was literally like an Apple store. It was like glass domes with little pinchers holding the fucking nugs. You could see them with cool high def cameras. They had a really cool bakery section. And I met the buyer that day, and I so happened to have a suitcase full of 6 different quarter pounds of, I had grown 6 varietals in my 25 light room at that time, and they all just came out perfect. So I got the quarter pound of the best ones that I could get. And it was Bubba, OG, Glue, Pine Tar Kush, our Blue Knight, and then J1, Jack Herrera strain. So I had a little bit of everything. I had a couple gases, I had a sativa, I had a fruit, and I just sat down in front of the buyer, who we all know now is Matt, who started Turtle Pie Co. He was the buyer back then, and he kind of was like, I just pulled one jar out. And he's looking at it and looking at me and looking at it. And he's kind of giving me the nod. Like, he goes, so who are you again? I'm like, well, I'm Eli.
Here.
I'm like, I'm Eli. What do you mean? Like, he goes, yeah. But who are you? I'm like, what does that mean? And he goes, well, do you have an Instagram? And I'm like, no. I was like, the OGs that raised me would have bitch slapped me if I would have put weed on the internet back in the day. He goes, well, that kind of really like, you should look into that. And so they liked my flower. I was the primary provider of my Gorilla Glue 4-cut that we called the 90s glue. It was just the stickiest, loud, like what glue was glue at its pinnacle. We got it about 6 months earlier than that. So I was their primary holder for the Gorilla Glue there. They also kept my strain, the Blue Knight, as a boutique strain. That was our heirloom genetic. I had a really good relationship with him. I ended up meeting Billy from Golden State Labs, who a lot of people in the industry know is just he's been out there longer than a lot of us internationally and just doing his thing. He met Drew from Green Dog Collective, and it was kind of all of us I felt like we're starting to blossom right when we all met Turtle Pie through MetaThrive. So it's kind of like the only other people that were even talking about rosin in the Bay Area that I knew were Drew, Dr. Ladybug, and my buddy High Noon Collective. I think he's out in Oklahoma now, but yeah, they had the same kind of things, a higher ground. He had like a KC36, a Golden Goat. Like there was really like, we had them in coin envelopes with like store-bought labels. And, I'm like, here, check out this rosin. They're like, what is this? I'm like, just smoke it. And I was like, tell me what you think. And, it was really a young environment. And, then from there, another place in San Francisco, Barbary Coast, they set up a really swanky, like turn of the century vaudeville kind of dab bar. I met my homegirl Ginia there. She was the buyer there. They were taking my rosin for a while, and then all the regulations hit, and it was like, okay, well, if you're not licensed or you're not this, then unfortunately we can't take this from you anymore. So yeah, that's kind of where was my little last stint into the, showcasing my product in different storefronts and doing all of that and trying to be on that line. But I think that Matt and Turtle, the whole concept of you need to start an Instagram. And I look back on it now that I started it right after he said it. And I look at the people that I've connected with. I look at the events and the knowledge and an openness of what I've even tried to promote on my page is just, I'm just real. This is just my camera looking out here. I wouldn't take it back for nothing. I think that it's, a great tool now, but it's just funny how we came from a generation that thought that would be the downfall of us. And now look at us. We're both sitting here. You're in Canada and I'm in Oregon.
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, that's a really important part of this thing is I think a lot of us were raised, right in a way to not share things and come from a space of keeping things more to ourselves. But I think that if we want any part of this culture to survive, that it's essential that we start sharing it. We can't ask anything to survive if we don't tell the stories around it. So that's kind of been my look over the last couple of years. And I think it's important that we continue the outlaw culture and continue to share those stories because, if we don't, it's going to get all washed away. And this is just going to be another consumer good or a lot of people are going to work towards it being another consumer good. So
it's scarily headed that way. And some people look at federal legalization as like, oh, finally, but now I'm looking at how they're trying to classify and what that will turn even the already shattered recreational industry into. It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
As most people would call me, I'm a habitual line stepper. I have no problem helping both sides of the line.
I think a lot of us are. So I want to, before I get your opinion on what's going on into present day, I want to take it back and sort of ask what that 64 transition world looked like for you. Like how did that affect your life personally?
Well, it affected, I think, not just mine alone, but I think, just the whole, I think that half the stoners that thought about legal weed sounding good didn't give the 64 pages of deposition a read. Looking at all the subletted things that are taxes are only used for law enforcement. There's no schools, there's no roads, there's no education. Like it's really just kind of was the pits of a proposition, you know. And all I could do was express people, you know, read it, talk to your congressman, talk to your local people. How is this going to affect you in your business now, operating under the 215 sphere? You know, and I have a couple friends that were high profile, you know, dispensary owners under the 215 law that had to scramble fast to make it happen, you know, especially in San Jose where they were trying to just lock moratoriums down left and right. Yeah, I mean, me directly, you know, I feel like I, in the heart of me, felt like it should have been good. And in the idea of what it embodies should be good. But in the wrong hands, it's being mistreated greatly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's very easy, hindsight being 2020, looking back, saying that was, you know, a flawed system, and 215 was, you know, a much more functional system to create sort of an ecosystem and grow a culture and a community and commerce. So it's really interesting to see what's happening. It's sad to see what's happening in California, but you know, what was 2018, what was your decision? Like, you just started your Instagram, you're now moving back away from a brand, and you know, what was your next step there?
Well, no, I think when I started my Instagram, I was like, well, I sat and talked with my buddy, Troy, my partner. I was like, hey, man, we got to come up with a brand. So all of a sudden I got to be on the internet. Like, what's going on here? I was like, if you had my phone number, you knew who I was, kind of thing. And I was like, all right. So then that's when I fully dove into it. I was like, ET. I like aliens. You know, I'm into that stuff, and grew up with the ET movie. I'm Eli. He's Troy. Like, it all just kind of fell in. I was like, ET Farms, man. And I was just like, my tattoo artist, you guys all see on my sleeve, JT, he's one of my brother's best friends. He actually did the logo as a oil on canvas painting for me for the first time. I have that put away in my safe, and then got it digitalized from there. So yeah, from there, I mean, that's when I was like, okay, if this is really how it's going to go, it's kind of we're waiting for the sunset of Prop 215. We need to be serious. Went and got Ben Rice as a lawyer, got our actual portfolio together, got all the official signatures together, had our binder for distribution, transportation, all the whole nine, which we could have been having the whole time, but you know, black market things. So yeah, I mean, I think that transition like really put me into like 2019. It was just kind of running with Resin, man. I was really part of the Sasquatch family early, and like I loved going around to the events with them, and I helped promote them a lot. Like I spent a lot of my time really trying to get the culture into not just Sasquatch, but you know, there's a trusted brand. You know, they built a brick shit house right there. You know, so yeah, kind of into 19, like that's where. I think the hardest, I think it was the most adventurous and yet the hardest year of my life kind of happened at that point. I was asked to be the head cultivator at the lemonade and cookies facility in Oakland. That Growing Passion had just, the whole Mesh Ventures thing happened where lemonade and cookies all came together. And it was 488 light flowering rooms and like a 300 light veg room, triple decker. And that was just half of it. The bottom floor wasn't done yet. So I guess I would say enter the Skrill. I don't know. Some of you guys know Uncle Skrill Mo, Skrilly the Kid on Instagram. He's my buddy Will. He's from the East Coast. He's crushing it. You guys definitely check him out. But yeah, we went it together, and he was the operations manager and I was the head grower. And, you know, it was a facility that it cost a lot of money and it just wasn't quite there yet. And it was a transition to where I thought, okay, this is the next plateau of my career, is growing on this level. And, you know, it all kind of came crumbling to a short up after about 8 months, 9 months into it. And we moved on, and we don't need to go down the details with that. But, you know, I think that's at that same time as when I was going through divorce in my life. Me and my ex decided it was time to split up. And So it's kind of like a career crash and then like a life crash all at once for me. And it was the first time I had felt that empty in a long time. And, you know, it took me a solid year to like kind of have my peers kind of be like, yo, Eli, it's, you know, come on, you're already in this. Like, it's time to keep pushing. And, so yeah, 2020, beginning of 2020, I went out to Santa Cruz. I'm sure some of you guys know the Three Bros Grow out there. There's like three brothers that are legend surfers from Santa Cruz, Tyler, Mark, and Russell. Those guys are awesome. Yeah, it was literally like a week before the pandemic. And we're out there negotiating. They had just built a lab there. They had inside cultivation, and everything was all micro business. And it was my first push into the rec world of hash. That was, you know, 2019, 2020. And like, when I was at Ego Clash in 19, I was like, Eli, are you working in the rec world? I think I was the only one. And so, yeah, I got the Three Bros. We got them all turned on, got a sweet solventless program turned out of there. Their buddy Will's got some epic footage of us just making diamonds and like really showing the community like the solventless can be back on the rec market at an affordable price. And yeah, it was a really strange time to like navigate. The world is closed, but cannabis is essential. I mean, if you look back on it, that's because of the taxes, not the medicine. But yeah, it was a wild time. Like it was, you know, I was seeing, you know, from that side of the organization with a family-based group like the Bros are, like really seeing the benefits of somebody like me or anybody else that have put in the time and ledger to, like, solventless shouldn't be one or two companies monopolizing on everybody. Like it should be accessible to everybody. You know, we got pushed into such like the hashishan culture from thousands of years ago and all the way up to today. It's like this pocketed culty kind of thing of weed. You know, I would drive up when it's if it doesn't bubble, it's not worth the trouble days. You know, we were looking at hard time for going and getting bubble hash in Humboldt. Like, you know, so seeing it from, you know, the recreational side for the first time, it was a really, really great experience. You know, unfortunately, Three Bros had to circle through all their genetics catalog with a new thing that for pass testing, and, you know, hopefully we'll get them back online soon enough. But yeah, that was kind of into the 2020s. And then that's when I took a turn and I went to my Santa Cruz group, who deep ties to Jack Herrera's circle, a lot of old timers deep in the Santa Cruz Mountains for generations. I have a breeding homie, and that's where I started my Frosted Waffles project. I was just like, you know, that's one hat that I haven't taken care of yet, is literally taking a strain and creating it. And I really was, you know, for solventless hash making, especially. So yeah, that's where the Frosted Waffles project started. He has 4 20-light booths. Starts with the pollinating room, then the pick your teens room, then the flower room, then which ones goes, and back around again and it goes. So he dedicates 80 lights to breeding. We went through probably 35, maybe 40 seed packs of the Cookies and Cream V3 from Exotic Mike. I really wanted a lemon dog leaning male. I was like, this male needs to smell like Kim Dog. And I was really lucky in the earlier days with my partner, White Jesus, and everybody, that I got to run a lot of Joey B's Kim Dog strains. I 1, 2, 3, 4, ABCD, Star, Trace, Dogs Waltz, which forever will be one of my favorite terps ever made. That was a Urkel on Trace Dog.
What's the terps on that?
Blow the neighborhood off. It's the loudest zesty lemon Trace Dog with just that Urkel purple. Like I know BJ SOG Army might be hiding onto it. Hint, hint. Yeah, no. So yeah,
you're looking for this lemon chem male.
Chem male. And so yeah, it took a long time, man. Hunting for studs is a different beast. You know, it's like, you know, you're always so used to be like, no, I don't want those. And you're like, okay, wait a minute. No, I do want those. And why do I want those? Became a really big thing to me. I'm like, okay. And, you know, under the guidance of somebody that's been breeding for 30 years. And then he had already hunted an ice cream cake V2 pack. It was a really gelato we forward, nice purple ice cream cake. Wasn't all big and bulky like the wedding cake side of it. It was just a nice, pretty plant. So yeah, that's what we crossed once we found that stud with the Cookies and Cream V3 stud.
was there a thought on what characteristics the male was passing and what you were looking for in that male?
I wanted the Kim Dog structure. I wanted the Kim Dog vigor and veg, and like how I wanted a nice bean pulley. I want to top it 4 to 6 times before I'm ready to flick it. Like I want a nice hardy cush plant. But with the genetics that all of those made up, it's not really cushy. So I was like, okay, Kim. So let's lean towards Kim. And I just love the high of Kim. I've never been scared of 70+ day strains. I think let them grow, baby. And, you know, I had a lot of backbone with Kim Dog genetics in my years. So, yeah. Once it was yellow, like, I mean, that's the one thing that happens with Kim heavy plants is that the yellow's out pretty quick.
And so were you able to identify that single male?
It's like I said, it took 35 seed packs.
Wow.
A lot of money. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Full price. I mean, we just were like, fuck it. We're sticking with Cookies and Cream V3. Slap a couple bands down. Let's go. So, yeah, I mean, and I had a lot of luck with the hashiness of the Cookies and Cream by itself, the V2. You know, a lot of people think it's kind of flat terped. You know, it's a hash strain. It's sticky. It's all trichomenes. There's not much terps to its hash. And, you know, that was what I was looking at, is that the gelato heavy ice cream cake female that we had already had a really nice floral smell, and it almost smelled kind of like a sugar cone kind of smell to it. So that's kind of where okay, let's do this.
Waffle cone. I got you.
No, so waffle cone, I had to back up. Compound Genetics made waffle cone right around the same time I was trying to hunt the Frosted Waffles name. And I had a little contest on my Instagram. I was like, all right, look, I can't do waffle cone. Compound, Chris, I love you. That's yours. You win. What's good? Let's name this strain. And I just said, I'll give anybody an ounce of this flower that wants to help me name the strain. And I don't know, man. I had 200 fucking people hit me up with auto name generators and different names and this and that. And the one when Frosted Waffles popped up, I was just like, kind of sticks. And I was smelling the flower, and I'm like, okay, yeah, Frosted Waffles it is. And ended up giving him an ounce, thanked him. He's a big CBD flower rosin guy himself. He likes CBG flower, CBD flower, CBA flower rosin. He does a lot with that. I work a lot with those cannabinoids as well. I ended up losing my mom in 2016 to cancer, and it really sparked a huge CBD and other cannabinoid value research for me. So a lot of people know I make topicals as strong as 10, 15,000 milligrams. I make tinctures that I make people drink the whole tincture at 5, 10,000 milligram. I've done some pretty wild things with those different cannabinoids.
In solventless form as well?
You know, I haven't really done, and so the rec license that we have coming online here in Grants Pass, we have a hemp manufacturing permit on there as well. So obviously we're going to want to make some nice dabs for the community, but my goal with this license is to actually utilize that hemp license a little more. And I want to show the vast community of CBD users, which my demographic is generally 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds, that we can show you solventlessly through extracts, not only just dabs, but I would love to see a culture of people not be like, I can't take a dab. I'm going to be stuck. I'm going to hallucinate my brains away. And it's true. I mean, it's a big blast of 80% THC, but if we can start doing 1-to-1s, 2-to-1s, 10-to-1s, 20-to-1s, 40-to-1s, pure hemp flower dabs, pure hemp wash dabs. The only thing I ran into was pressing some, it stayed under the 0.3. It was the T1 hemp strain, and it was about 24% CBD. And I pressed flower rosin out of it and had it analyzed, and it was 60% CBD and 2% THC. So basically a 31, which falls well above which actually now it's 1%, correct? I think it's 1% that you can have, where before it's hot. It was 0.3 for a long time.
Yeah, it's different everywhere, but
right.
I think that they've changed it to 1% as far as the farm bill in the U.S. goes. To my knowledge,
it's crazy to me that it's that CBD gets put into this group, or if you're trying as a patient and looking at a dispensary, CBD flower, which should be technically if you're going off a THC rating, cheaper than hemp flower should be cheaper. It's more expensive than the top shelf flower that Alien Labs has or Connected has. It's more, and it's very rare to find in the California culture.
Yeah.
I'm here in Southern Oregon now, which is a hemp megaplex, and I've been really working with CBG, CBC, CBN. Like I've have a lot of access to a lot of cool cannabinoids that a lot of the different countries not really messing with here.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a new frontier that only a few people right now are looking at, is, starting to breed for desirable profiles, characteristics, or outcomes in different non-type 1 varietals. So 1-to-1s or 20-to-1s or 10-to-1s or 30-to-1s, like you were talking about, and then having, specialists go in and carve out their niche in, I'm looking for 1-to-1s that create good hash that is on a fruity profile.
Correct.
And then, I think that is kind of a new frontier that I'm interested to see if it gets explored. I know that there's been a few guys for the last 5 years that I've been following who are playing around with those cannabinoids in solventless, but it seems as though they're a lot harder to work with. But I think
the minuscule yields comparatively. We all know about the 1% club, but the 0.5% club doesn't ever look too good.
The Ghost Club.
I've heard a lot of further advancements with cryo. It's like, I don't remember the name of the company. It was the big cryo push, but I have a friend down in LA, this Mike Scorpion. Yeah, Scorpion Crew just hit me up saying that they have solventless CBDA, and it was extracted cryo wise. I saw it. It looked like thin sheets of bubble hash. I didn't really get to mess with it much, but we're like, well, we can't press this because it's going to convert from CBDA. But even the Fed said CBDA is good for COVID and everything, and like it's hard to capture that cannabinoid.
Yeah.
That just got exposed to me a couple months ago, and I'm really interested to see, because I know a lot of the early trials with people that I know that were working with liquid nitrogen or cryo just killed all their terps, broke all their heads, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah. No, there's still a lot of experimentation and adaptability to large scale. We've had this revolution in the last 5 years that I definitely want to touch on in a little bit with machine washing and commercialization. But when you look at where the commercialization levels are in solventless machinery, and you look at where commercialization levels are in solvent machinery or another industry, the scale isn't there yet. So I think that there's a lot of innovation to be had to be able to utilize, what's soon to be some incredibly grown outdoor varietals, at scale to provide product at a value that opens up a new consumership and is, competitive with potentially like a shatter consumer or something like that. But I wanted to ask you about the frosted waffles. So was that one selection on the mail and one cross? Were you working that line? Have you crossed that into other lines? Like, what are your plans with that going forward?
Well, that's been the big question. Everybody's like, man, you grew a bunch of that. Where'd it go? We took 2.5 years. We F5'd it. We kept going back on each other.
Wow.
Probably, tens of thousands of clones, seeds. Out there. We really went for it. The guy's got an 80 light house that's completely dedicated to it. So we took it all the way to F5. And then we went ahead and took it one extra step, and we got it Mary stemmed as well. There was nothing wrong in the rooms. Everything looked good, but I was like, A, let's put this on ice. And B, if there happens to be anything, let's just might as well polish it up and make it nice and shiny before we send it out. There's only been 5 farms that I've given it to. I wanted to see it. I grew it indoor personally. I wanted to see it greenhouse. I wanted to see it outdoor. I wanted to see all the different conditions of living soil versus salts. So I've been running a couple trials through, and there's a couple potentials that I've been talking to. The original Dankster, the Stay Fly crew out of Southern Oregon here, biologic living soil farm. He makes all of the Jiffy cakes, the Cot cakes, really outdoor breeds for the environment here in living soil conditions. He's talked about, he's like, yeah, bring me the waffles. I'll throw it out there when I do my pollen chuck next year. Missed the window on that one. I'm going to talk with Rozkaya a little more at Moth this upcoming month. I would love to see coffee on it. I think that they're both just hashy strains, and you could do coffee and waffles, right? They go hand in hand.
Bro, coffee and waffles. Let's get it.
So yeah, I mean, I've held it close to the hip. I do have one of my buddies, Well Rooted Genetics. He's out of Oklahoma. He's running it. He's ran 2 or 3 runs of it. Everybody out there is loving it. It did 5.5% terps on flower, about 35% THC. I know where tests are at these days, but to see flower actually click that high was really nice. Because it's not necessarily the crazy nosiest thing. It's ice cream cake on cookies and cream. It's not the crazy jump out of the bag. It's a very, very deceiving, wow, this is going to be a workable high. And then within 20 minutes, you're standing in front of your refrigerator being like, whoa, what am I doing here? So, it's a really good base platform, and it has a lot of pride to me. I've had a lot of good farmers that have put it through, and every single one of them are loving it. They're like, outside, it'll never finish. Indoors, I like pulling it like 69 to 75 for the tops, so a lot of commercialization on farming that are scared of going over 55 days these days are not going to want to run it. So I think by hybridizing it and starting to then toss the hybrids out to the public and like, let's see what this thing can really do over the next 6 months to a year. I think that's a really good direction of where I'd like to see it taken. And anybody that has new pollen, let's toss it on it. I can show you guys all of the COAs, all the flower. It's been all the melt. It's all on my ET Farms page. I blasted it all over it for the last year.
As somebody who's put the work in, dedicated the time, energy, and effort into these projects and understand the amount of money that go into, sometimes these thankless projects of breeding that go nowhere. And Absolutely. Luckily, you have something that went somewhere. Like, where are you happy with the state of the seed market and game today? Or do you feel as though we're heading more towards branding than actual understanding of where value lies in the seed?
I mean, are they trying to put everything through CRISPR and do all that crazy nonsense? I have, I guess, a new revival with our buddy Taylor. All those seeds are really, really interesting to me. I think that a lot of people, it's not the seeds themselves. It's not the breeders themselves. It's the kind of the unfortunate catalyst that drives society these days is I want this now and I want it to be right. And every time it has to be perfect. And instead of doing what I like to call the Lord's work and really dedicating your time to like, no, look, I need to number every single one of these. I need to not top these ones and top these ones. I really need to do the dedication it is to really see what these traits are, what you're really looking at,
But do you feel as though we're in a market today that will reward you for all the effort, care, and energy you're taking compared to somebody else that was smashing 2 things together, creating a polyhybrid, and then charging maybe 75% of what you would propose to charge for your work?
I mean, absolutely. I think that everybody that's on your Boy Scout patch list, like pheno hunt a run, create something, do beyond taking cuts from somebody and flowering them. Mm-hmm. I really believe in everybody that asks me like, how do I get into this, or how do I get a foothold? Like, for somebody that's been in it, for me, I was like, I've worn so many hats in this time of, which is, I'm young compared to a lot of who I consider my OGs and the B.E. Smiths and all the guys, and all I can say is find something that interests you outside of cannabis. And if it so happens to fit in with cannabis, then that might work out for you.
I like that. Let me one more question about breeding, and then I want to take it back to your story. But we're seeing a lot of, basically in the last 2 years, the whole resin breeder, solventless resin breeder, has really emerged as a category of breeding, and that didn't exist 5 years ago. And I wanted to ask you, as somebody with experience, do you think that we can push this plant any farther than we already have for yields? Or do you feel as though the GMOs and the strawberry bananas and those big yielding plants are probably a demonstration of the plant's genetic maximum?
That's kind of a dual-headed sword there. I mean, okay, GMOs, strawberry bananas. Let's talk 5 to 6% yielder. 7, I've heard of GMOs, right? This, that, and the other.
I mean, we could let's get into
just to call it a random ball field, right?
Sure.
And people have a wild description of what that is. Total weight. We'll get that's a whole nother topic. But yes, I think potentially the expression of finding new terpenes, finding new flavors, finding new consistencies of ways to manipulate the hash, sure. But if you're looking at it under a microscope, how much of a trichome colonization is on this flower and how much can you take off of it is only in the precise execution of that, right? So it's like, do I think that all of a sudden I'm going to hear that there's a 20% wet strain? No. But do I think that finding what it's hard to even say, because it's like people are numbers driven and then there's people that are flavor driven. So people that are numbers driven are always going to need the 4 to 5% no matter fucking what. I don't care. Let's do GMO, papaya, ice cream cake, and like put it out there, And then there's the other people that are like, well, it's not going to really yield that much on the long scape of things, but man, to have those terps and to have that rarity, I feel like is kind of where that, like I said, that crossroad is. I think that the normalization of this breeding number, and I know Adam fucking Mission Hell, he was talking about it. He's like, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% is the new highest THC on the menu at fucking the dispensary, right? Like, there's so many different variegations of what gets you to that number. And like me just developing SOPs and time and being a cultivator and being a grower and like learning what gets you to that. Yeah, I think that growing for resin is really what's going to change the most of it. I think that people like Taylor, like they're growing strains specifically bred to maximize insolventless extracts, I feel like are going to become more of a thing. Hopefully, they can we give them their general stars? Let's give Z a 4-star general. Let's give Runts a 3. Let's give all these guys what they are. But we need to keep thinking outside of the box. If Mother Nature is going to keep providing these terpene profiles for us, we need to do due diligence and find them.
Taylor is Little Lake Valley is providing building blocks on building blocks of washers, and he's re-strengthening his males with new genetics and building those males every year from seed stock that he's working on. So he's working on both sides of his lines towards his whole life is solventless. So, I mean, I think that when we have more focus like that, we're going to be able to have more depth of flavor. But what I want to ask you is, do you think that we're going to get dramatically higher yields? Do you think that we're going to be talking about dramatically higher yields in 36 months than we are today? As far as
I don't necessarily see what's dramatic as in 1 to 3%, 5 to 10%.
Like I mean, not 5 to 10. I mean, even an increase, an average increase shift in 1% because of overall breeding. Like, do you really see breeding making that much of a difference in the pheno hunting, or do you feel as though the plant, these washers that we have at these maximum yields are kind of where the plant is maxing out as far as yield capabilities go?
I mean, I have yet to see anything over with my own eyes. Our peanut butter breath did 9.2% to melt.
Yeah.
And that was 149 to 70. That wasn't even with the 40 bag in it.
Yeah.
It was biologically grown in Oklahoma from my friend Matt, Wild Natives out there. He's always gone back and forth with me being a salt grower, and he's a living soil guy. I've tested it time and time again. And so for me personally, 9.2% to melt, and it pressed back within the 85th to 98th percentile. I mean, was just insane numbers to see, and that was viable hash. But I think let's test everybody's knowledge. Are we talking about to melt? Are we talking about to rosin? Are
Yeah.
we talking about, there's a lot of variables within that I think needs to get subsidized before we really focus on, is it going to be more? Well, grow for resin production. Don't go for pumping out your flowers. I think is going to be the SOPs within the garden that's really going to change that.
How hard was that for you as a cultivator, moving the mindset from grams per square foot to resin per square foot?
Yeah, wild. I mean, I'd be in week 3s and 4s just ready to be like, phosphors, let's go. All right. And let's stack these flowers to be like, okay, hold on a second. Maybe they're not quite ready for all that. Maybe they're not ready for that at all. I've still got a long way to learn on my transition into that. I unfortunately thank goodness for Troy. Like he's been holding down the cultivation. As you guys see, I've been on the road. I hate being away from my flower houses, but I got a great team that's holding it down. But yeah, I think in the long run, and the answer of that is, I think that no, I don't think that there's going to be some GMOs are 7 or 8. There's going to be a 10 to 12 anytime soon. And if there is, then what have we been missing this whole time?
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting topic to always touch on and see where people think, because a lot of people are pheno hunting and breeding for resin now, but I think the diversity we're going to get is pulling flavors in with more acceptable yield numbers. But as far as the performers, the top performers in yield, I think we're going to have a hard time pushing that number as far as just what the plant can bear.
Right. I mean, we're talking mass per area. Yeah. How much more? Look at who's Schwale, the guy. He's got all the crazy boop 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 boop.
Yeah. Farmhouse.
How much? Farmhouse. How much more can you stack on top of that thing? Right. It's. I don't know. Maybe
interesting. A lot of the guys that I have on the show are, when I ask them about the issues around comparing apples to apples with yield, a lot of these guys are more artists than anything, and they go, listen, I don't listen to any of that. I don't really pay much attention to it, and I know what I'm running, and I know what my number parameters are. And so, like, when I hear other people's numbers, they're kind of just like fairy tale imaginary things that I don't really pay attention to. And I'm like, that's cool, but that's not how we progress faster as an industry. Like, if we all can be talking with the same nomenclature, the same vernacular, apple to apple, and going
100%.
What did you yield? What did I yield? What did you yield on this machine? What did I yield? And we're all talking about, off the press, or we're all talking, and we're talking.
I feel like that as a hash maker, that's one of the most valuable tools you have in your toolkit, is to have your playbook of the genetics and how it was grown. I mean, you have to know a whole lot more. Is like, oh, ice cream cake does this. Like, no, okay, well, is it greenhouse, outdoor, indoor? Is it salt soil this? I mean, there's so many different varieties of conversation in that. But yeah, I think that we're trying to get there. Do I tell people, when I tell people it's 2,200 grams for a fresh frozen pound, they're like, oh, well, I've heard 2,000. I'm like, okay, kilos, it makes it easier. But like, am I under the influence that I think that every single strain has the exact same water weight that we're equating that to? So I don't know. I think that I think for common sense and just common culture, and just to have a baseline number, I think that those are safe numbers.
Was it pulled? Were those plants pulled out of a well irrigated or very moist hugelkultur bed, or were they pulled out of some Rockwell cubes that were dried out for the last 2 days? Like,
right.
that those numbers are going to affect. So I mean, at some point, I think water activity has to come into play, and we have to measure the moisture content prior to freezing, and then we'll be able to add one more step of math to the equation, and then we can demonstrate or agree on parameters, and then reach a more valuable piece of information than we can exchange than this quasi dick measuring.
Yeah, it's like the rhetoric is like, oh, it has to be this, and like, here's my 5%er.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. No, I think it's going to have to be the community that comes together a little bit more on coming to acceptable terms on what it is that we're actually looking for. Why is it that we're chasing the highest? Like, I know a lot of people's markets, and I know a lot of hash kids, they all want varietals. So why do you need 10,000 pounds of one flavor? Because it yielded the highest.
I think the issue really resides in the variability of cannabis, and going to understand that from varietal to varietal, you're going to have one that, the 90 to 120 is decidedly and standoutedly the best, and it's the best on its own. And then you could have another varietal where the 45 all the way to the 160 is what the majority of people would prefer, or 50% of consumers would prefer. And so it's very hard to
I mean, you all know me. I'm a full spec guy, baby. Bring those Kinibs on. I don't care if I don't care if I got to wipe the banger just a little more. It's all good.
So let me ask you this: being a salt grown guy, a self-proclaimed salt grown.
Don't put that on me. No, I have. I'll give it a quick breakdown. I use cocoa, 7-gallon pots. I use House and Gardens Coco's A and B for the base. But every single week, I'm brewing a 300-gallon live organic tea in there. Sometimes they're just ferments. Sometimes they're nettle teas. Sometimes they're herb teas. Yeah, I'm guilty. My whole garden in my backyard's all hugel beds, and like everything that my Oklahoma buddy rolls around in his grave for not just growing living soil already. I took Dr. Elaine Ingham's 5-day intensive. Like I was in the class with her for 5 days. The girl is that woman is Captain America of sorts. I definitely feel that every time I went toe to toe with the exact same light, the exact same pot, the exact same everything, back to back from my house and garden to his living soil, THC was right around the same. His terpenes were usually 1 to 2% higher in flower. Were there, you had to try to keep that control, 2 different environments and 2 different houses, but we're like, just did one specific single light. Let's really battle this. I really want to see. And like our consumables and like the salts that I'm using plastic bottle nutrients are obviously not a viable thing for this earth. Like I understand what biologic farming and living soil is absolutely what everybody needs to do to be, sustainable.
COAs.
I guess a dog caught in his old ways. I guess maybe a little bit on my one old school house.
No judgment, brother. It's just knowledge for the community. So COAs and philosophy and theory aside, in your career to date, can you make any observations on salt grown versus organic, as far as a hash maker and a cannabis consumer goes? Like, do you feel as though one does certain things or certain terpenes better than another?
I have a conflicted demon on both sides of my shoulders, because at the end of the day, on a molecular level, what is it that makes that trichome? It doesn't matter if it was fed with muddy organic water or salt water. What it's actually transpiring into is on an elemental scale. It's not what input made it. It is what it is. So like the owner of Access, he says that as, what is it really, can you, and I think that should be more of a thing. I think it should be have a salt grown, a cocoa grown, everything lined up on blind taste testing. Can you really tell a difference? Is it, and has its own judgments on people's palate. But on a molecular level and on a scientific level, what is the difference between a trichome head that was grown with salts or was grown organically? Is there any? I'm not sure.
I don't know about molecular. I think the theory behind the organically grown is that there's more down at that root zone to create opportunity for the plant to create more offerings. And I think, when we focus on COAs and terpenes that are present, we have to remember that we're only testing for the terpenes that the lab has standards for, and that we have to just understand from just simple familiarization with these plants that you could take 3 cultivars with the same 3 dominant terpenes in the same order, and they're vastly different. And that has to be from the major effect that the minor presence of those minor terpenes, esters, flavonoids, and different compounds have on the magnification of certain aspects of these major terpenes. So I think that there's a lot more to unpack there, and we're going to look back in 10 years and be like, man, like we were trying to read a map with
we're only looking at 30 of them.
We're looking through
how many terpenes are out there? Yeah, absolutely.
I think so talk to me a little bit about so with the breeding project, is the plan now to cross a number of sort of hype cuts into this longer flowering varietal, or what are your thoughts?
No, I'm not interested in any hype cut on this thing whatsoever. I want to get some heirlooms on it. I want to get some staples on it, and I want to get some rare terps on it. And I think that especially what Taylor's provided us and what it gave me in seed form, and trusting some well-known breeders that appreciate the work that I've put into it. It is a true F5, and I have Mary stemmed it. This thing rips, this isn't an F1 toss and cross. This is a two-year passion project of my life that I didn't make not a dime on for a long time.
Yeah. And
I've only given it to about 5 people, and everybody has reported back nothing but good, besides it's just a long strain.
Yeah.
And I've seen that because of the Kim heavy father, that after 3 or 4 weeks, the flower starts yellowing like most Kim strains. Yeah. So maybe get something with color on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's have some fun with it. This is kind of my open 2023 to the world.
That's awesome.
Who wants to put some stuff on the waffles?
So I know. So what happened after 2020 or 2020? Was it 2021 when you worked on the project with the frost?
So that was 20. That was like basically all the way through the Three Bros time, and then kind of got into the later part of 20 is when I went and started helping out in Oklahoma with that living soil project that I was talking about. Helped him build a 35 light dual spectrum, which was actually tri-spectrum. We had thousands and 630s, but the 630s I had both different spectrums in. So we had 3 different colors of light, all in living soil beds on the HD grow boxes. So that was kind of like my first, how do I take my hydro mind and put it into living soil? And we kind of collabed, and he was like, look, let's do it this way. So that was kind of like.
Is that what you took Elaine's class for? Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not. No, that was a stern look from Matt being like, hey, her intensive's coming up. You should take that class. And he flew out, and he came and sat with me. He knows her very well. He's converted 5,000 plus acres of wine land in Napa, Sonoma. He is my soil nerd guru. But he's biologics and biodynamics. So some of those butt heads with Dr. Elaine on anaerobic or aerobic. So that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I think that, ultimately I shop for, or if I can't provide for myself and my family, I shop for organically produced this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Am I going to sit here and talk shit to Athena? No. Do your thing, boys. If that's what you're going for, then go get it. But if there's always going to be a mindset of which way am I going to go with anything in life? And I think it's just a decision of, it's going to take more understanding of what's going on the mother nature cycle of how everything's breaking down and keeping your soil alive and doing soil samples and really being attuned to why you're doing this. Yeah. Where I feel like some people are in a mindset of just rinse, wash, repeat.
Yeah. How did you design the living soil indoor cultivation? Was that in beds?
Yeah. So the HD grow box, they're really beefy gusseted metal trays. He's up out of Northern Washington, Seatown Gabriel, a lot of Tree Hawk Farms, a lot of them are really nice, beefy 4x8. And then we use the grassroots 4x8 bed, and then built in all of the layers of the soil from there. I think he's on cycle number 9 or 10, I want to say. Right now. Always does cover crops, is pulling foods and yummy things out of it. He's expanded into some light depth greenhouses and A couple of Smitties, one small team show. I won't call him a one-man show. He's got a great team over there. But if any of you guys in Oklahoma, like if you want to see what Living Soil is really all about, go see Matt, Wild Natives, for sure.
That's very cool. So at what point did you hook up with Access Rosin?
So that was when I was working at Three Bros. So that was pandemic beginning. I had seen him kind of pop around, Spencer. I'd seen him pop around, and I was like, so I was very, Sasquatch, and like there was a peer pressure sitting there. I didn't really mess with it much. I was kind of just in my ways, but I was getting to a point where I was like, I saw the 4-way press, and I saw, I was like, wow, look at this thing. Like, what's this thing all about? And I hit him up on Instagram, and I said, hey man, I was just like, I'm time tested hash maker. I would love to see your equipment in play. What's good on a demo? He was up in Santa Cruz from LA within 24 hours. He saw me and he was like, Eli wants to do this. Okay. Cause he had kind of gotten the dodgy dance around from some people in the industry. We don't even go around that. And it was just kind of came in late. Everybody kind of was like, oh, I do this already. Like, why do I need this? And so I was like, hey, bring that over here. Let's check it out. What you got? It showed up super professional. Had the 4-way press. It was the early model, so it doesn't have what you guys see currently where you can put the Magnum jar. You could put a little Ego Clash, a little bit bigger jar underneath the first one. Same concept. He asked me how much melt do I have when he showed up for the demo. I was like, I don't know. I got like 350 grams, and he goes, I was like, how much goes into this press? He goes, well, you can do 200. And I was like, just kind of like blinked at him. I'm like, wait, what? And he goes, I was like, okay. And I was like, for me, it was kind of a challenge for me, for him. It was, I'm asking you to show me your machinery. I'm a master on my machinery. What does this have to bring to the table here? And, he talked a lot about the automation program that he was developing at the time. And we decided to go with the hand pump on it. That big old machine, we hand pumped it. And I said, look, I'm going to sit down with my equipment, the Sasquatch, and I want you to see how I press. And it's because I'm not scared of pressure. I end at 7,500 pounds per square inch. I do it slowly and I do it right. But as I was taught, with a little bit warmer of a presser at, over 200, you got to move safe and efficiently. So he watched me do that, and he's like, all right. He's like, I think I see what you're trying to accomplish here. It was Garanimals, finest tissue culture Garanimals. It had done almost 8% at Three Bros on the wash from the wash to melt, and it went like 9 spins. That was the craziest wash I think I've ever done. And we loaded, what did we do? We did 30 gram pouches. I don't remember the exact weight. I think we either did 30 or 44 times 4, but we got 92% return the first press that we did on this thing. Just the pouch all 4 pouches were just empty. I was like, the highest I had got at that point in time was an 89. And so we did the math, and I was just sitting there like, whoa. And I was like, it's like, well, you want to do another one? I was like, well, that's all I got. So it was a genuine first good meeting. It was like really seeing, I was like, wow, this is made. And it, as you guys have seen on my page, Access's page, everybody that's pressed with us, it is creating a very different consistency right off the press. And that's what changed I was like, why is this crystallining so hard? Why is it separating and crashing with this direct flow? So that's kind of just what was in my head for the first year. Kind of moved on. I wasn't ready for the machine at the time. I just really wanted to see it and really meet him and kind of be like, hey man, I'm a real hash maker. I'm glad you came, because he had been dicked around. And so yeah, it wasn't until last year is when I actually purchased the machine. I took on a large contract with that guava gelato. All you guys see me, guava gelato coming out of my ears. It was over 1,000 pounds of frozen material contract. So I got his machine. I got an Icon 120. I got 4 large pharmas. I had Pellier make me some sick custom cans, and we put in work. I was able to, by the time harvest happened to the time Masters of Rosin happened, was able to do 42-ish pounds of rosin in like 2.5 months. And that was me and my lab partner, Grace, just kind of 6 hours at a time here and there, just filling jars. This thing's just so efficient. So, it really turned into like, okay, I saw the demo. Now I went full flex on this thing. And like you guys can see it on my ET Farms page. I did everything from fresh press to the wildest wet cold cure I've ever seen in my life. The biggest THCA formations I've ever seen. It's all documented. So yeah, that's kind of where it started with Access there. It was kind of like an intuition, like I should check out this machinery. And, he came very correct. Spencer designed all of this himself. He doesn't have engineers. Like I saw the CAD CAM programs. So yeah, I mean, it's that was kind of an organic relationship.
What's the theory, or what's your assumptions about what's taking place with this directional flow that's causing a higher quality of product and output?
I mean, I wouldn't consider it higher quality. I would say that it's not sacrificing quality by going as large as we are. Because a lot of people, even on my Sasquatch, for example, I know I can run 50 grams, but just my old hash ways, I'm like, I'm going to do 14, 20. Yeah. Now we're in a point in time where everybody I saw showed the S2, they're like 50, like, let's put 80 in this thing. So the mindset's kind of changed on, can you is the oil good enough? Is the resin good enough to liquefy into rosin fast enough under said pressure? Yeah. I ran an 80 gram pouch on the S2 already, which we've been suggesting 50, 60, and it worked flawlessly, but it was really high quality melt, Yeah.
So let me ask you about, your lab. And I know you might not have one set up, or you're, consulting at other people's labs right now, but, in theory, first, let's start with the bag set. What bags do you typically like to run?
Brother, my lab will never go anywhere.
You're moving around.
I'm messing with you. I was fortunate enough to be able to have a legacy place like I do.
Perfect.
So in your lab, I have used the varieties of different bags. I think I stuck with just some bolt bags back in the day when I first started. I've really been using a lot of ice extracts bags over the last couple of years. Have some changes that I would do. I kind of want a hybrid between the V3 and the all mesh. Like I want just enough Kevlar backing to give me some rib structure on the containers that I'm using, my catch cans, my garbage cans, whatever they may be. Yeah. I feel like the all mesh sets have some, not just hers or theirs, have some. It's a lot of people are still trying to pull so much weight like a big Kevlar bag set, and they're not realizing that they're all on full mesh and they rip them. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of the guy that has the Nikes, the Vans, the Adidas, and all of the things. I really look into product management and quality. And, I grew up with my dad being a CNC machinist, so it's like the most attention to detail. Yeah. I'm not one to pull brands. I'm one to be like, show us as a consumer and show us as a producer why it is that your product is superior, or why it is that this is changing something that the norm isn't doing. And I look at that at clothes, cars, wash bags, machines, all of the above.
Yeah. What about your bag set? Like certain guys are doubling up on certain bags in some scenarios. Is that something you're doing at all?
Well, I mean, it really depends on if I'm, going for like a melt run specific day, or if I'm just going for a full spec rosin pull, or if I'm going to do different micron bags all the way through. There's definitely different technique that I would do approaching like how aggressively I'm spraying down certain bags. Am I double filtrating? Really looking for those little fuzzies and all those little things. Like if you're going for a melt day, you got to be really on top of your cleanliness and approach to your day.
What are your?
I think a lot of the times I'm pretty guilty. I think I was really fortunate for Brandon from Third Gen to put me on the melt table for the first 2 Eco Clashes. The first one, he's like, "You're not hiding in rosin. Bring me your melt. Let me see what you got." I was like, "Okay, all right." I was like, "But I'm a rosin boy." was like, and then, it really gave me a respect to my own cleanliness and like processes in my day. I'm like, man, just a little, this little, it's going to mess with your juju if you're going for that.
It's unrelenting. Melt is wild.
And so, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't try to be judgy on brands. I think that there's a lot of quality brands out there, and I think that there's a lot of shitty brands out there. And I think that open forumly enough that we've all discussed a lot of those that we know what people like to use. And I say, use them for yourself. I that's the only thing. I know nobody has a exponential wallet just to keep throwing towards things, but there's some big manufacturing bag companies like Resin, Ice Extracts, all the Bubble Mans.
Everybody's different, man. Some people are like,
I like messing with people. I'll use like 2 Bubble Man bags with an Ice Extract bag and like a Resin Evolution bag and just come up with random microns to tell people what it is.
The forced collab. That's amazing.
Yeah, have to do it. Absolutely. I like how this one drains a little bit better,
Absolutely. What about your experience with washing with cubes? Is it something that you're a fan of? Are you open to it, or do you prefer washing naked?
That's all I did with that Icon. That's all I did. That whole guava gelato run was all in their ice cubes. Like I said, Icon 120. We usually load about 30,000 grams into it and then kind of give it the first like half pull and then try to get a little bit more down in there after it's settled. Probably anywhere between 16 to 18 pounds at 2,200. The bags are, my concept was I don't want all of the wet material to come out of this machine to where I have to catch it in a 240 bag and then flop it back up into this machine again. So I was like, okay, bags, stop that from happening. Up until that point, hand washing, I had done both, and I had tried to weigh the differences. But yeah, I chose to do it all bags. I definitely had some bags rip and tear and get stuck in impellers. That's just how the cookie kind of crumbles in that machine, where sometimes it can, a corner can get sucked into the vortex and it'll wedge. So I know 90% of the people that I saw were bagless. I just didn't want to deal with the transfer, and like it was doing it for rinse, wash, and repeat at that time because I was going through a certain phase of like I didn't have my chiller, so I had to. My chiller was on back order for so long, so I was running ice and bag in a system that was designed to do iceless and bagless if you wanted to. So,
did you feel like you were sacrificing any yield or quality, or not at all?
Yeah, I mean. The guava and gelato itself, I was getting anywhere between 2.5 to, I think the highest pulls I were getting were like 3.2, 3.4 to melt. So I knew it wasn't a huge yielder in the main place. I mean, for Oregon sun grown, beautifully, living soil out in the sun out here, it's beautiful material that went into it. But I didn't get to do any side-by-side data with the Icon myself personally. I always chose to use the bags. I'd say out of 70, 80 washes that I did, I think I might have torn 1 or 2. It's not like I was going through, consumables super fast. I just think that bottom agitation has a chance for things to get stuck. I mean, it's just kind of how it's designed.
What were your overall thoughts and impressions on the Icon after working through all that material with it?
A lovely machine. Ashley and her partner and all those guys at Ice Extracts, I first saw it get dropped at the 19 Ego Clash. They brought him out there and I was just like, what's that thing? So was everybody else. It's a beautifully crafted piece of machinery for sure. Yeah. I have nothing bad to say about it.
Like I've heard others comment on, really enjoying the variability in the controls and the ramp speeds and
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think, and now that I'm with Access, I'm not trying to sound, business-like at all. This is just my experiences. There's just the 2 different types of motors. The high frequency motor that's revving up and turning down is really awesome on the Icons and the Ospreys, to where you can create a vortex and like have it kind of do its thing and then kind of come on back down. And you can go however you want speed wise within that, right?
Yeah.
There's super cool and variable on all numbers. Their touchscreen basis is really nice. I think the only difference in what the Access on motor wise is a servo based motor. So instead of having to create torque and RPMs to spin the water, it's literally on a servo that's electronically controlled by every 1/16 of an inch. So you can go me, or you can go 5 different rotation. It's all customizable, but you're not having to create a vortex to move things around. Your paddle is what's moving. And so we ran into a situation with Leaf that we were running 85 pounds and we had it filled up, and it was too slow. Not a bad problem to have, but it was such a touchy motor that I was like, man, this is really not moving it enough. Not saying that the other ones can't do that, but that was the only difference that I saw in actual motors, high frequency motors compared to servo motors.
What was your thought prior to getting involved on the commercial side of this machinery? Like as a hand paddler, did you feel as though these machines were at a level that could produce the same quality? And were you surprised coming into it, or did you know
that's a great question, man, because that was something like, hand wash or die, spin number 1 only 90U, like people get so specific on what they want. I'm like, bro, I'm mixing wash 1 through 4, and like you're getting all the specs. Like, smoke that shit. No, sometimes, but no, I threw my 90 bag in there. I threw the Ice Extracts 90 in there off that Icon. I was like, first pull, we had 30 something pounds of hash in there, or material in there. Sorry, pulled the first 90, pulled the melt, smoked it, was absolutely 6-star. Pressed it, and I took top 20 out of top 40 at Masters of Resin with it last year, or the beginning of this year. Oregon field grown guava gelato.
Wow, that's awesome.
90U. It was 119 to 90. Because like I hate single spec people. I love you guys, but it's always what bags on top of it is what we're talking about here, people.
Absolutely.
So no, yeah. I mean, and now I've seen it time and time again that like automation and scalability to anything, my back hurts. You know how long I had that paddle in my hand? A long time. So, and especially with the Bruteless 65, like I was literally like big hand stirring, right? So I'm like, can automation and machinery keep this mojo going and not just, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why all of us, strayed away from the OG like Bubble Magics, unless you put a speed controller on it. It just beats the crap out of your material and makes green hash. So, I've seen all of these companies make a very quality product and be able to make good rosin. My goal, can you still make good melt on these things? That's the ultimate judge to me. And so I implore any of these companies, like, what's up? Let's make a 6-star melt competition with your automated machines.
That's awesome. I'm into that. So what are your thoughts on top agitation versus bottom agitation, having so much experience on different machines offering both?
I'm going to have to say now, being exposed to top, it's got to be top. There's no mechanical bindery happening in the bottom.
Yeah.
That's it. That's that's not because of anything or other. If you just look at it, like there's, the top agitation is allowing, when you're spinning the vortex down, to circulate down instead of pushing up and propulsing back around again. I feel like I'm no helicopter pilot, but I would love to see somebody that understands the jetty and the propulsion, like to really look at what cyclones we're creating. What's pulling it off? Does it need to be a little swish, or does it need to be like a stir?
Well, I mean, that's a question I have for you. Like in your mind, what are you thinking from Frenchie and like MTS and a number of others who are in this school of thought that the rotation and the vortex and the pressure created from that vortex is what is creating the separation, versus others who are saying that transition and shift is really what's assisting in that separation. Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna just pull a Bay Area answer. I'm in between a thistle dance and a Roomba. So you can see me gigging, and you can see me twerking, and you can see me dancing. But what's my water doing? It's doing la rumba. That's all I'm giving you.
Yeah,
that's all I'm giving you.
All right.
Don't splash water everywhere. Maybe is the only thing I have to offer.
All right, I think that's fair assessment. So, I mean, touching on this rosin versus melt thing, and Brandon putting you in melt, are you now? Where's your preference lie? Are you still a rosin boy, or more towards melt these days, or what?
I just want to make the 91U bag and the 89 bag. And I just want to carry them around like a hat. It's like some shorts. No, it really, like I said, Brandon throwing me on the melt table really made me like clean up my act. Like I'm not trying to hide anything in my rosin. My lab is the same cleanliness, but like double filtering, throwing your hash into a cold water colander and letting things float to the top throughout the day, cleaning that up. And there's a lot of things you can do, and I think that a lot of people are stuck in their own tactic. But what I try to teach is SOPs, and what I try to teach is people when they're asking me is, what makes you comfortable? What are you trying to achieve here? And like, let's work there. I don't think that automation or hand stirring, or you're using a wooden spoon or a fucking Stanley shovel, as long as it's clean Stanley shovel, people, do you boo kind of thing.
Are there any like specific tools or tools unique to you that you've come to rely on or tend to regard as highly valuable in your hash making process?
Absolutely. I think I got like the Butcher Bill, like roll up leather bag. I got the specific wide mouth shovel spoon and a little scraper. I'm a mechanic by trade, so I think that kind of comes hand in hand with it. But so I was like, yeah, I mean, there's obviously I think that's what I learned in mechanic school the most was, a mechanic's not nothing without the tool he's got.
100%.
But no, I mean, I think just having a nice, it doesn't take much, a nice, cold room, clean area, clean bags, some ice and water, and some ambition.
Absolutely, bro. Yeah. Speaking of tools, though, I want to touch on the freeze dryer.
Okay.
How much variability and experience have you had? I'm sure a lot, but what are you running your shelf temps at, and what are your thoughts around freeze dried versus air dried melt, like as far vis-a-vis quality?
Well, the air dry sojas. So that's how Phil taught me was microplaning. Hold on, I got to go off screen for 2 seconds. I had to show you something.
No worries, bro. Air dried sojas. Yeah, shout out to the homie Air Dried or Bust. That guy, he's doing some good work. He gifted me a gram of Ego.
Oh, did you? Oh, nice. Yeah. So did you see that we pressed his double verde and that purple haze on the black Afghan at the Gasman's show?
No.
Oh, yeah. He came through. So look, this is for all to reminisce. It's actually a brand, people. It's not just what we're doing.
Oh,
micro playing that stuff. So I mean, hey man, I learned before to answer your question. I learned before freeze dryers. Obviously freeze dryers are out there. Came from the cheesecloth in, pushing down bubble days.
Do you feel that there's a quality that can be achieved in freeze dry or in air drying that cannot be achieved in freeze drying?
I feel like I'm sitting on a dagger right now answering that question.
Pass. I'm not trying to put anything.
No pass. No, I like it. I like thinking about it. I feel like pulling something under vacuum at negative temperatures is definitely changing the structure of what's in this machine. I definitely know that people say put cold traps on your freeze dryers and look at how many terps you're getting pulled out of there. Look at the hydrosol water coming out of your freeze dryer. So I always say, and when I'm consulting people, if you have an area where you can keep 50 degrees and dark and have some nice aeration and airflow, air dry. Are anybody really going to do that these days with what freeze dryers have to offer in compatibility? Some of like Dab Ninja didn't tell me his speed. Jindo told me she's got it down to like 3-4 days. I was like 5-6 days. Like, is it going to mold? There's a lot of questions like in cleanliness of the air drying process, which can be hermetically sealed. We can clean that up. I don't know. I like them both. I would say that I would have to say every time I'm sitting at Ego or every time I see air dry heads, I'm like, ooh, there they are.
Would a better rosin be produced from properly air dried heads that were then?
That's what I'm saying. He came. So Dab Ninja, he came through to my table and he goes, hey, I got like 30-40 grams of air dried heads. You want to press them? And I'm like, what you got? And so he like had, I think 13 grams of, I don't remember whose genetic was, but I know I haven't even hit it yet. I'm scared to hit it. It's on my dining room table over there. It's way too sativa for me these days. It's purple haze on the black Afghan. It's something rose, something. So we pressed that first, and I was on the throttle, and I showed him. We did it at 170. He goes, this is air dried heads, move, so we no slip, no blowout. Had some really nice rosin come out. And then he's like, oh, wait, I have like 30 grams of HBK's double chili verde. I have a jar of it over here. He left me with the jar of it. But we did that on a 42-gram press. And he just was greasing the puddle all together as it was coming off the pouch. It's beautiful. I think we both have footage of it.
Ooh,
but I haven't been able – nobody's air drying enough to have that competition. Same strain. Same grow, same wash, air dry one, because that would have to be what the variable is, right? It has to be all the way up until the point of the drying process.
Yeah. Well, are we going to get to a point where, that's what competition grade resin is versus resin for the masses? It'd just be very interesting.
What's your answer, Jameson?
I don't
air dry or bust?
No. Like I air dried on directly on cardboard for the first 3 or 4 times I air dried, and then I figured out the wax paper.
There was supposed to be paper between the cardboard, buddy.
And I was just not like, I'm not a dainty microplany.
I got big knuckles.
Yeah. So so I wasn't long for the micro planing or this, and the sieving was tough for me too. So I didn't have a lot of experience with air drying. I didn't have a lot of experience, a deep amount of experience until the freeze dryer came along. So it was just interesting. And I always realized, like, I would smell and taste that freeze dryer water. Like, it was just so interesting to me. And I'm just like, I'm definitely.
Wait, you would drink the water coming out of the freezer?
But I would I tasted it more than once. Like, I tasted that shit for sure.
Hey, it definitely crossed my mind a couple times. I'm drinking wash water, but I'm like, I don't know. That's a little shiny. That's a little shiny.
It was weird, but I had to do it. But just kind of understanding that, and I mean, you have to put into account that, of course, there are terps that are, releasing into the air that you don't see, and these are the terps that you get to see from the freeze dryer that are released into the water. So until we really do some more research, we're not going to know.
It's in the air. I think it's a toss of the coin at this point.
Are you playing with your shelf temps much, or do you kind of set them at a certain level on everything, or what are your experiences?
I've seen some, Harvest Right and all their greatness of dialability. We'll leave that at that. I've been suggested anywhere between 35 to 55. I feel like I kind of find a middle ground right around 45. A lot of people look at me weird. I turn my the oranges up on top. Like, I flip the basket over. Like, isn't that supposed to be the tray heater? I'm like, no, it's up here. Don't worry about it. But I also, this is free game this is a free game Wednesday. I take as soon as everything's frozen, full tray, I'll pull that slab off there, flip it, get it off the parchment paper, sit it back on the tray, put another piece of parchment paper over it, and smack it with backside of my spoon and break my ice water hash once it's frozen into a bunch of little pieces, little Thor smash all the way down. The amount of time, I don't go by freeze dryer timers. They're highly inaccurate. You should not be like, oh, final dries 3 hours from now. Let's go drink a beer. Like, pull that thing open and look at it, stick your tool in it, drag it, I think that by making that surface area completely full of chips, I've been able to shave 1 to 3 hours of dry cycle time off. So, I mean, especially when you're needing to maximize space and really fill those trays up deep, because, a medium will hold about 100 grams full, as long as you got that water hash ratio together, where a large pharma might be do 150-ish plus. I think that if you're going to use the freeze dried game, it's about maximizing space and time of the machine running itself. But if you think about it that way, how much shelf, cardboard and bookshelf space do you need to dry sieve the same amount that would fit into that freeze dryer?
So much.
Right. Yeah, because you just have to salt and pepper it across this parchment, So I think that there's balance to it. I think on a smaller craft hand, either hand or automated wash scale, I think if you can pull off air dry, I think that you should at least learn how to, as we'll go back to it, microplane. Watch your knuckles, though. Nobody wants blood and knuckle in their hash.
Absolutely.
Right?
I want to.
I got some on my knuckles. I won't lie. They're there.
I do too. I want to ask you about Fresh Press. What are your thoughts on it?
Fresh Press. I think Fresh Press is the beginning of the Bible. I don't know what chapter or what verse that may be, but it's like basically the ultimate look into what resin you have sitting there. I like coming off my press. You guys have seen me use just the backside of my palm when I'm getting done waterfalling. I'll pull it and I'll just make a shatter slab essentially out of it. Just disperse the heat out of it, try to cool it down as fast as possible, and just make a little sheet out of it. Fruit roll up, for lack of better words. I'll take that and I'll pull it up and I'll look in through my lights. And I'll be like, do I have any duff in here? Do I have any particulate in here? Where is there a cloudiness trail happening of where THCA hadn't melted all the way in with the terpenes? Like, what's locked in where, and how clean is this rosin at this point? And like, that is kind of the ultimate, like, I mean, for lack of a better words, a window into your soul right there. You're really getting to see it from that point. Other than it's beautiful to look at, and I feel like it's a really good tool to see how the cleanliness of your rosin is. I feel like smoking it, the terpenes are trapped into a tempered glass type state. So your nasal test, you'll never like stick your nose to a jar of Fresh Press and be like, ooh. I mean, there's some out there, obviously. But I feel like as nature does its progress, whether it's cold cure, jamming, this, that, and the other, like the terpene profile becomes so much more pronounced beyond the Fresh Press stage. I think that I've had a lot of good tests on considering how much THCA to terpene content there was. Okay, how fast is this buttering? How fast is this greasing? Is it turning into just like a dry crumble? Is it turning into like a wet kind of, I can smash it around and kind of be cold cure eventually? I think Fresh Press is, I think that's kind of the, put it on the table. Be like, yeah, man, look at it. If you can get that bubble free, clear, like it's like a pane of glass.
Do you feel as though Fresh Press will be less popular in the California market in 3 years, or do you feel it will be the same level?
I think that the desire for it will be the same. I think it's up to the distributor and the people that are holding on to it to respect what Fresh Press takes to keep it Fresh Press. I think a lot of people get saddened by the lack of caring for the product. It's sitting in a warm environment, or it gets cold and warm, or if they're opening it, all these things really, like, if you're really trying to maintain that glass and that look, like, it takes kind of a specific environment for it to
Cold.
kind of really.
It's a lot. It's a cold chain, and it's a lot of pressure on the transportation of that cold chain. Like, one of my personal feelings, and it might not be right, is that if I give you a gram of fresh press that you then enjoy to take home, sit on your router, marble up, and then whip into a cold cure,
Right.
versus if I took a 4-ounce jar
Right.
of and properly cold cured that jar out over a week or so, and then whipped it and then served you that cold cure. My opinion is that that cold cure that I served you out of that mother jar is going to be a lot more terpy and louder than the 1 gram that you whipped up from fresh press.
Yeah, I think that
do you agree with that, or do you
absolutely? Yeah, I think that just trying to do it in that small a form with that much air exposure.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're gonna try to keep it fresh press, let's keep it fresh press. If you want to throw some cure time onto it, let's go ahead and go down that. Don't, oh, this is starting to butter on me, let's try to whip this into something else.
Yeah, I've experienced some incredible fresh press, but I feel as though those terps are hunted for fresh press. And I feel that those are even more rare, something that presents very well and is soft, supple, and even terpy to the nose on fresh press is very rare. And I mean, if you can get that, you should run with it. But I think 9 times out of 10, I'm taking cold cure, maybe 9.5.
I would have to say, yeah, some type of time and release on it is more where I'm headed to. But man, I'm just telling you, there's something about just having a big old 1/4 pound sheet of fresh press in somebody's face. Just feel like, here, look at this.
What are your thoughts on jams? Have you played a lot with heat post process?
Yes, absolutely. I feel the Resin Baron day and they went to Jared's, I think, is when everybody was like, ooh, what's going on here? I didn't know any of those guys personally. I definitely had tried some of theirs. Every time I crashed for jam or for that consistency, I've messed my hash up. I have gone past that and have gone now into complete, decarb protocols and doing it for pod ready formulations. But I feel like every time I tried to pull it when that half bubble stage, then put it on the crash mat, it never really worked out for me. Like it was cool. Like it did its thing somewhat, but sometimes I would turn some very beautiful cold cured hash into a green pile of muck. And I'm not trying to scare people from doing jam tech, and it's been a little more, defined up until that point.
No, I think that there needs the romanticism of like, oh, you can just add heat to this and it will get better. It needs to be smashed.
Good luck with that.
What is your opinion and experience on how many times you've found a jam that is the best representation of that cultivar?
Being that I have not made many of them, I don't think that I can honestly answer that. I think that I've smoked different people's jams from what I've smoked from their cold cures and their fresh presses. I feel kind of not two ways about it on my personal palate. I think that I don't know. I think that that's kind of like, do you like a New York or a ribeye?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like very rarely can I be impressed by a jam, and typically,
why add the heat when you don't need to?
Yeah, exactly. But every once in a while, I will tell you that there's absolutely a standout.
You were at NCRC. You tasted Squishers jam.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
yeah,
I think that knowing when to apply it and how to apply it to each unique cultivar is so important. But, I like to ask everybody that question because, some people don't even like to mess around with heat. Some people prefer to play with a lot of different heats and jams. And it's just hearing different makers' preferences around that. Like you said that you've gone full decarb, you're working a lot with carts, that's been something that's probably that is the fastest growing market segment in the California market, which is solventless carts. Like how how difficult have you found that process? Like, I know there's a lot of R&D that's involved in finding the right hardware and the right cultivars to do the right things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would have to agree that, I don't know, it's hard to put a percentage on it, but it's not every cultivar is going to decarb to a tasty pod formulation. I think that there's, a lot of information out there between the 140 low and slow to the 180, 190 quick and warm methods of getting to decarb. I do believe in, a piece of hardware like Kung Fu. I like his, there's no wicking cotton whatsoever. I've really followed a lot of different hardware companies for a long time. Basically between my buddy Mike Scorpion and Kung Fu's are the ones that I would suggest for anything non 510 thread. I think that there's the passion of having like a dab on a go is for some people. And I also think that vaporized hash can be tastier than hash on a dab. It can hold. There is scenarios where you've hit, maybe you haven't, but have you ever hit a rosin pod? You're like, woo.
Not compared to a dab.
Okay. So the Scorpion starts at 1.8 volts. It's at 2 flat for the middle and like 2.2. His whole concept behind this thing is just like, if you want a dab, hit your rig. You want some terps in your pocket. You want something to taste bomb and be able to be in public and get high, and it still tastes like, ooh, let's turn these things way down. Where I say I love John's, hardware too. The Kung Fu series is like, you want a dab in your pocket, buy one of them things and fill it. They hit hard and they hit quick. So I think that segment that's coming online is this convenience like the hot dog water Mario Karts, or is this, can we make this craft too? And that's all going to be on the hardware, and it's all going to be on it's going to be half on the hardware. The rest of it's going to be understanding decarboxylation, understanding the boiling points of what terpenes are boiling where in this decarboxylation phase. Is your container tight enough that you're not losing any of these gaseous layers through creaking? I've seen people that have been like, when the jar's open, I'm like, oh, there goes 20%. And I've waited like, like that little was all your terps, people. Let it cool. Yeah, it's an interesting segment, man. I kind of like jumped in, we all had disty carts and live resin carts and carts. But, I'm trying to give it to somebody and represent like, this isn't a cheap alternative. This is something that's badass and it's on you at all times.
How strain specific are you finding it?
There's a lot of the fruits that maintain better than the gases I've seen in transference. I feel like a lot of the pinings and a lot of the like deeper, musty hardwood ones of the gases don't translate as good into them. Like, I feel like a lot of the super duper fruits translate into the decarb better, but I just hit one of Sumar's diesel dough. It was a completely gassy diesel thing in a pod, and it tasted like a gas flower. So I think that that's also something as a forum of us hash makers and us people are just going to have to like, don't just be like, oh yeah, I got this tech, I'm going to fill these pods. Be like, let's talk about it. Like, yeah. What are we really finding that's working here? Because like, I feel like that's what's been such a driving force of me in the solventless world is that it was never about, fuck you, I have this tech, go figure it out. Like, I'm going to give you 60, 70% of it, and you're going to have to run with it is what kind of where we're at. Nobody wants to just, give away everything for free. But I feel like it's an ever evolving community that we're seeing especially within the solventless community that I've grown within the last 6-7 years of my life. It's like the time is now for us to band together and be, like you said, that outlaw culture can't go nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm not saying do bad things, but I'm saying like, remember what this is to us. I might have done a lot of different hats and be where I'm at now and do what I'm doing. But for the greater good, like I want this conversation between me and you to mature into people understanding that this is a real thing. And this isn't something that we're just sugarcoating, and this isn't something that we're just glamorizing as a lifestyle. Like, no, this is my life, and it's been my life.
I think that, you know, we're headed towards that as all of the individuals like yourself transition into more prominent legal roles. And what we have to understand is creating this community and open line of communication allows us to be able to do business faster than some outsider would be able to do business with us. And so we're not precluding anyone from anything, but the knowledge and understanding that, you know, these individuals exist and are a part of a culture that is more than the business world and more than just the way that they enrich their bank accounts, but, you know, also a sense of identity allows them access to communication lines that allow them to move quicker through complex issues. And that's the same thing that's happening currently with Chads and Brads in the industry, or you know, corporate entities that are, you know, communicating it on business calls all day. They're creating these open lines of communication so that when, you know, movement has to happen, those lines of communication and lines of trust and understanding are already open, so those deals can happen that much faster. So I think that it's really important that guys like you come out, tell your story, people identify with it, and, you know, can reach out, contact you, and you know, learn their way to get into the industry, or get the advice that they need on the upcoming project that they have. So I think it's super important to continue, you know, telling these stories and having events, and, you know, more hash or niche events for cannabis, you know, everything from, you know, flower smoking events to hash smoking events to edible events. I think it's all, you know, that's super important.
You know, I think more importantly, at where we're at, I think it's time to hit the torches.
Oh, let's do it, bro.
Yeah, we've been chatting. I love this conversation, by the way. Thank you, Jameson.
Absolutely, bro. I think it's super interesting, just like from where you've come from, and the amount of hats you've been able to wear is quite impressive.
I appreciate that. You know, I just kind of a constant quest of wanting to learn and see, push this envelope. You know, I believe in this thing. I can see all sorts of different angles of where
do you
this
see
can go.
Do you see dab culture growing? Like,
do I see the what?
Do you see dab culture growing?
Absolutely. Like, look at all these knuckleheads lining up trying to sit at that table. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I think really one of the unfortunities, because I'm about to light up another joint right now after I get this dab going, is the flower is, unfortunately for nature, it's, you know, a decomposing product. It's a plant-based product. It's a carbon-based product. And like pushing this narrative of, here, take 3,000 lights of canopy, take 10 acres, take 100 acres. Like, I don't care if, you know, the nitrogen seal way was like, they were trying to do that and they were realizing it was roasting terps. But I feel like what solventless, I mean, other extracts as well, but solventless, especially now, can offer is such a shelf stable product. Like, you can keep melt as long as your freezer turns on for, I mean, I've pressed melt a year later and it was fine. You know, and then rosin itself, especially in like decarb form, now you're turning it into the commodities based market of distillate. It can go in canine products, feline products, health and beauty products. It can get put into so many different spheres of SKUs and marketability, things that you can do with it. I was like, kind of why wouldn't you go solventless at this point? Yeah. We figured out all the different consistencies. We figured out all the different ways to kind of go about this to where it can match what you were having a reason for other extraction methods. So now that we've answered all those questions, why are we moving forward with anything else?
100%, bro. I I mean, especially with these larger scale machines, like the, the access machine and the throughput that thing has, and the new presses, like, that changes metrics.
Absolutely. I had somebody be so pissed off at me today on Instagram, and they're like, California only needs 2 of those machines. That's 300,000 grams every 22 days. They're like, that's too much. I'm like, well, I just look at it this way. You're not looking at the bigger picture, but I didn't even go down that troll hole. But I mean, it's just, I'm not hating on any other extraction method. I will say that at BizCon, which was my first BizCon working for a commercial extraction equipment, all eyes were on us. And this isn't me having any stick to this company. All eyes were on us. And what I was focusing on is, I'm not from the business B2B world. I'm not from the rubbing shoulders with CEOs and CFOs. Like, I came in there as a hash maker, seeing this equipment and see what people are looking at it as.
Well, I can tell you from having a open standpoint or viewpoint of the Canadian legal industry up here, and a pretty good handle on the U.S. industry down there, there's a life cycle point at which the large-scale corporate entities become extremely interested in solventless extraction. And it comes after they've set up and invested heavily in solvent-based extraction.
90% of the people that were coming here were like, we went that direction. We need to go this direction. This is scalable. Let's go here.
And the idea of it on paper is extremely romantic. Like, solventless on paper at a steakhouse, shared amongst a bunch of white-collar individuals, is a romantic fucking story. Like, there's no, like, workplace hazard, and it's just ice and water.
The C1D1 booth costs about as much as the West does.
The whole setup is less than your C1D1 on your butane run. And so, I think that they get sold a bill of goods, but what happens is the access to proper material becomes kind of the Achilles heel of the industry, and until those farmers catch up. And I mean, that's not the issue in California, but it absolutely is the issue in Canada.
It's a huge thing working with access, that I'm pushing a proponent of getting to the cultivation sites and talking about cultivating SOPs for, if you're really going to jump into this sphere, we need to talk about your approach of this farming, and we need to standardize it in such fashion.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, a cycle that every market goes through. I feel as though there's a lot of but there's a lot of large scale failures that we've seen in Canada, and large scale upcoming failures of larger solventless companies who don't have the understanding, passion, and legacy behind them to know that, the most important relationships that they can forge with are the farmers. And if they have to suffer initially for the betterment and to solidify those farmers into their positions, and then make it up on the back end, like that's the way that they should be doing it, and entering into exclusive relationships and partnerships where they can support these guys, because that's what's going to differentiate them. Like, I want to know what your opinion is on genetics. Like, we're seeing a lot of, or in the last 10 years, 20 years, that, or in the last 10 years, I'd say 10, 20 years ago, cuts were harder to access and more tightly held. But in the last 10 years, probably the most tightly held, super elite cuts that are.
Can we go back to it took me 4 months to get a $3,000 unrooted cut of OG?
Exactly. But what I'm saying is that cut of OG was accessible. Now, do you feel as though we're going forward into a time where cuts and genetics will be shared as openly as they have been in the last 5 to 10 years? Or do you think that it's going to become more important to hold that unique genetic or unique phenotype expression to be able to build your brand around it? Or do you feel that that's not the key to building a brand?
Man, I'm going to have to just go back to my root. The Rasta Akiru, sound guy for the Marleys. He taught me some crazy techniques in the day. Like, he's legacy Marley family sound guy. He goes, listen, bro, the only way for you to hold on to your genetic is to hand it out.
Yeah.
And he goes, you know what? And they're like, a lot of us instantly go to, well, if that competes for my market share, this, that, and the other, boop, bop, beep. He goes, look, the people that are going to do it right are going to do it right. The people that are going to do it wrong are going to do it wrong. It doesn't matter who has their hands on it. If you want to make sure that that thing stays around, hand that thing out. Has that been that way with my Frosted Waffles as of yet? No. But I feel like in the long run, it's up to the companies to keep if they want the exclusivity, make something else and move on, right? You know, how much is it? Like, not everybody has the patents to Ferraris, you know what I'm saying? So is there I don't know, it's kind of a give and take. Like, are you somebody really because you have a genetic, or is the genetic that you created what gave it to the community and for the medicine for the people? Like, Frosted Waffles doesn't define me. I'm happy that I made Frosted Waffles, and I think that it's a fucking great strain. But, like, am I going to just ride that on out that I'm the Frosted Waffles guy? No. So I think that it's kind of its own path for breeders. I don't know. It's kind of it kind of irritates me a little bit, like the Z stories and all the things. It's like, boys, let's get over it by now.
It has to be that way. The lore has to be built, the branding, the marketing, the stories have to be told.
Absolutely. I get it. You
know, that they have to be inserted in there for, you know, and it's your decision whether you want to put you know, credence or value into them or not. But I think that at some point, you know, a brand gets built and then you're able to revise and plug in new things. But, you know, my concern is that we're headed to like a mass branding, large scale corporate entity, three large players similar to the potato chip section. You know, and so,
I mean, I had a sad and long realization. I have it on my highlights of my Instagram stories. I don't put too many things there, but I have a lot of friends in the beer and wine industry. I have, especially in the beer side, and I had to bring up to light to the beer people in the room that in the early 1800s, there was a lot of breweries out there. Then 1850s and 60s started coming around, and the big three came about: Miller, Coors, and Budweiser, all their respective families. The big three took over and decimated the beer industry for 100 years. It was 1986 or 4. It was right in the mid to late 80s that Sierra Nevada out of Chico made a stand and made that pale ale. And now, 20 years past that, look at what the microbrew generation is. And I had to show people this is what happens when the big three take over. Nothing else matters. We know who those big umbrella corps are. We know who they are. We don't even need to say the names. What really needs to stand is, and I don't think that it's going to be such a big push because, A, we're not in the 1800s anymore. People want what they fucking want, and it's not like against some book that you can't have it. I think that, you know, it's up to, like you said, I don't want to call it outlaw culture anymore. I want to call it the people that actually care. I'm gonna look right in the camera about this medicine.
100%, man. I mean, it's where it came from, but it's not what it is and what it's formulating into. So I agree with what
all my boys have said it multiple times, James. And like, sit back and watch it crash.
Yeah,
so it's already going. It's the tumble has already started, and I think it's these corporate entities that are going to have to deal with that. But, you know, look at what's become stale on the market. Like, I have friends that run dispensaries for multiple big brands all across everywhere, and I'm like, show me your best flower. I'm like, ooh. Why has this become the thing? Let's sell this year-old flower before we have to throw it away. Why has regulation and standards made it so difficult for you to get from cultivation to jarred to consumer? You know, Three Bros told me, you know, they were like, it's hard for us to even, they're having to white label their own flower because of how much taxes have gone on it. And they're a small company trying to compete with 3,000 light grow that backdoors 60% of their material anyways.
Yeah. I mean, what path to what's the biggest challenge for the small cultivator in California right now? Like shelf space, path to market, access to
I
discount?
would taxes and pay to play.
Yeah.
Bro, what's a type 6 type 7 we won't even talk about because that's solvent that's really expensive. But I mean, micro business licenses, and those are looking into the uppers of way into the hundreds of thousands. You're into the millions of dollars before you're even ready to roll. In California, we know it. It's pay to play. I'm born and raised here, and so I get that concept, but like it's just unfair. Like, what about me? Why haven't I got a license in California? Shit, I would love to give you guys some money and let me give 710 Labs a run for their money. Like, but it's just so unpractical because of how out of reach it's become for so many people because of that crushing corporate force that's being applied. All they care about is the bottom line. All they care about is whatever dividend gets you to their books being balanced.
So is it, globally or confidently in North America, cannabis is not in a good place. What's your vision for California? Like, do you feel like this is the bottom, or do you feel as though it's got to get worse before it gets better?
I don't know. What do you call rock bottom when you hit it, or does the rock fall on your head and you figure it out? Like, are you just gonna keep digging? Like, do you care not about everything that these numbers are saying? Like, I religion and politics are two things I don't like to talk about. But I mean, I don't know, man. I really hope that these times can prove that we need the mom and pops and the people that are showing it, man. I don't want to smoke everything else that everybody else has been smoking on, and like, why are you giving me something that's like just barely getting by? Like, have some pride and have some like culture into what you're doing. Like, I don't care what business you are. If you're going to make Coca-Cola, make it the best Coca-Cola I've ever drank in my life, every single can.
Facts.
Right? But excuse me for my rant there, but
no, I mean, do you feel as though the market's going to get better, the prices are going to go up, or do you think that it's going to be another tough year coming up? Like, what's your outlook as somebody who
that oversaturation is not going anywhere for 5 to 20 years?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be just a under/over governed market.
Yeah.
I think that to look at year to year at this point, see what's in front of you, folks. Like, I don't know if the next Gelato Skittles runs is going to start fetching 10 bands anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be smart with your investments, man. Learn, be educated. It's not always about just go, and just like trying to do the best thing that you can do. It's like, figure out what it is and that's where it's like the echelon system of like hierarchy in cannabis. It's like corporate, I got all this money, and it's like all the next people down are like, bro, we've been in this, who are you guys? But they're like, oh, we have the money. And then there's the other people down here that are like trying to figure it out and trying to like become what these guys are, and we'll never get here. And it's just like shit rolls downhill, as they say in the military. But like, what I'm trying to help fill the sphere is like, look, you guys up here, all of this is what is keep making sure that this thing's going.
Yeah.
And like, let's look at this bigger picture here. And like, I'm using a screen as visualizations.
I see you. I think that guys like, yourself are super key and crucial to helping things move forward and bridging gaps, because there's huge gaps in our industry between the visionaries and the guys who are commercializing this industry for profit. And that's something that needs to be addressed, because the visionaries and artists and creators and people who are really connected to the plant are the people that drove this industry to where it is, and will continue. And we need to make sure they continue to drive that. So I think it's super important, what you're doing with the number of your projects, with Axis, with all that. I think that, the value that you deliver is great, man.
Hey man, I'm just calling it how I see it. I try to be real. My main mantra in life is you can't fake realness. And like as long as everybody stays real to what they're about and they're being true to themselves, that's all I can ask of them.
So what are plans moving forward with ET Farms? Like, is there?
We're gonna take this ET Farms train over here to New York and go have a good time with you guys.
Let's go. Let's
go. I know. Can New Year's get here fast enough? I'm trying to get to New York.
Oh man, it's 25 days away.
I know. Well, we needed to de-thaw a little bit because my bags are still stuck in Colorado. I had to go buy another shaver today, dude. I was like, damn, I look like Patch Adams over here.
The travel, the stuff that's been going on in the U.S. right now is brutal.
It's all good. It's all good. So I mean, moving forward with ET, I've really given Spencer and Access a bit, my time. I'm their outside sales rep. I'm looking to, really show. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, other than let's see this on a different scope. I have a lot of time on it. I'm willing to do anybody a free demo that's not really just, hey, come and press my melt. I think that the technology that Spencer has put into that big machine, the big rosin machine, is really, I mean, BVA themselves came up to the booth. They're like, how did Spencer get this thing to do 100-ton head to do +1, -1 PSI? I'm like, I don't know, but there's a big computer down in there and I'm going to find out. So, we have, it's something been fun and something been organic. I'm really glad that I got into, purchasing the equipment myself, getting in with him early, really showing him what us hash makers need. Cause he was kind of geared around flower rosin early, like lots of tons and lots of big things. And we've got this thing pretty dialed. And, everybody that doesn't need this commercial sphere, you see the groups that we hang around with. Like, I can't wait to get, you saw the S2, but not in action. Like now we have the dual acting pneumatic, like everybody it's funny because I thought everybody would be S3 automation. Yes. Like, ooh, this is the next best thing. But most of the culture that I've talked to within our ranks have been like, no, I want the hand pump.
Yeah.
I want my hand on the throttle. I want to feel and see what I'm doing, and I'm one with this motion. Yeah, and it's the step
you'll build into the next one, right? Like
build into the next one, right? And so now I'm at a point where I was able to utilize the large scale machine, where the S3 is the largest of the single pouch press, and it has the exact same computer program. So we have all the exact same automation, plate clearances. It's all PID controlled. It's a beautiful piece of machinery. Cannot wait for people to check it out on melting of the heads.
Yeah, no, Access Rosin is the official press, and we're going to have them on display as well as, in the video and having the makers working on them on the days leading up. So,
and you guys see, this is me, and I'm going to have Spencer there. Like, please, let's come see us. Let's get some pressing done. I'm not trying to hide anything. These things are beautiful pieces of equipment.
Bring your resin.
Bring your resin. I keep telling everybody, this thing's like a backpack.
I want to, as we kind of wrap up, I want to ask you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You're at Ego, you're at Emerald. In the last 3 months, what are some of the most impressive melts, rosin, or flour that you've seen? And shout out the makers who are behind them.
Okay, all right. I mean, I got to give it to my boy Phoenix and Sumar, man. This guy just cleaned house on everybody this season. What did he get? 8?
Bro, the Skittles from Phoenix.
Bro, the Showtime, bro. That's the one. No, I mean, obviously, and like I said earlier in my conversation, he really helped me get started in the industry. And I told him to get a press for like 4 years. And so I'm so happy. Like once he got a press, he really took to, let's go for resin and let's do this. And look at it shows. We all smoked that Z. I mean, obviously T-Square. I mean, bro, the list could go on. Anybody that knows me, and I know you guys, I love all of you, and you guys all fucking crushed it this year. I cannot wait for the next year. Let's fucking go.
That's
Use my language.
That's fair. No, you got a lot of fans and put you on the spot like that. You're like, yeah, no, you're not gonna do that.
Yeah, I feel like the Oscar music would start if I started saying something.
All right, proudest achievement in cannabis in the last 10 years. Putting you on the spot. What would that be?
The CBD side of things, I successfully have shrinking 2 different types of breast tumors and 1 different type of intestinal tumor with high strength CBD testing, both orally and topically.
That's phenomenal.
I have Boston Medical Journal maybe about to write me being this crazy CBD guy.
That's amazing, bro. That's
awesome. I'll shove it down people's face. I'm like, hey, I asked a lot of physicists and a lot of doctors, and my family's medical, and I was like, can I hurt anybody by going too far? And they're like, there's only one thing you got to think of is there's a liver receptor, the PC4. I have to look up what the enzyme number is, but anything over 1,000 milligrams of CBD ingested, your liver slows down. And it should. I mean, it's running 1,000,000 miles an hour all day with what we're putting through it. But they were just like, yeah, as long as it's not like heart medicines that need to be every 3 hours, you'd probably slow those down. But yeah, so like I said, I've made as strong as 10, 15,000 oral, topical. Drink the whole bottle. Yeah. So that's a good achievement, man. It really makes me believe that this stuff's really medicine. We're not just getting high and talking shit. 100%. I really respect everybody, this plant, this culture, and this earth more than anything I can ever explain.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely.
And I really, really, really appreciate you having me, brother. I know we've been rambling on.
Absolutely, man. No, we're wrapping up now. I just want to, I appreciate having you on, as we kind of wrap up, as anybody else that you want to thank or shout out that's kind of helped on your journey that you haven't touched on, this is your chance.
All right, here's my Oscar moment. No, honestly, my friends and my family, like I said, like you guys know who you are, like my dad, my brother, my sister, you guys see me go from the black sheep of the family to this is what I'm doing now. And I got a lot of people that are relying on me, and I can't wait to keep bringing it to everybody. I think my business partners, anybody that I've ever crossed paths with, and you guys have made a home in my heart. And like, I ain't done yet. Like, what's up? I'll see you guys in New York. I'm going to Cat's Deli. I'm going to Brooklyn, Brooklyn Bowl. Like, what's good?
Catch Eli at Melting of the Heads. He's gonna be moving and shaking. He's gonna be there for the full 3 days. He'll be there for the days leading up. It's gonna be great. Eli, where's the best places for people to get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
If you guys are looking on my professional page and want to talk anything Access, it's Eli at Access Resin. You guys can find me on Instagram. My email is the same, and we can link there. If you guys want to talk ET Farm stuff, you know where to find me there. I'm here, folks. I love talking to you guys. You guys mean a lot to me. I want to thank, and at the very last one, I want to thank Adam and Hannah for linking us two together. Mission Hill.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see you guys in your own stomping grounds. We're going to go romp.
Big shouts out to Mission Hill.
Yeah.
Melting of the Heads. We still got some tickets left. meltingoftheheads.com. Check it out. Appreciate everybody who hung in for the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great night. Cheers, everybody.
Have a good one, boys.